You are the Zeus who tried to challenge the God King. Aurora turned her head. She was wearing a saffron-colored mask, and endless fragrance came from her. My mission is to open the gate of heaven and paint the earth with the color of dawn. Who is the God King has nothing to do with me. Great Zeus, if you seize the court of God, you will also hope that your court of God will have the dawn. Aurora stood on the carriage and bowed to Zeus. I will not resist you. Now, I will fulfill my mission. The time has come. Aurora stretched out her white arms and gently pushed open the gate of heaven. She waved her other hand towards the sky, and the dark night sky lit up instantly, and the brilliant color of dawn appeared. Goodbye, great God. Aurora glanced at Zeus meaningfully, and drove away in the carriage. Aurora is the daughter of the sun god Hyperion, and her younger brother, the second-generation sun god Helios, was taken away by Zeus, and she knows it all. She also knew that her father had promised to withdraw from the war, as long as Helios could be guaranteed to be the second-generation sun god. So Aurora will not rebel against Zeus. She only hopes that she can preserve the priesthood of the goddess of dawn. However, this god, as the rumors say, is majestic and handsome, full of the breath of a god king. The image of Zeus remained in Aurora's mind. The gate of heaven opened wide, and infinite light shot out from it, and a carriage pulled by 4 batches of flaming horses appeared from the gate of heaven. The sun god Hyperion, dressed in a luxurious purple robe, was sitting on a chariot, and he saw Zeus. Great God, Hyperion stared at Zeus. The day has finally come. I will not participate in this war. Can you return my son of God to me? It has been a long time since Helios was taken captive by Zeus and placed in the thundercloud. When I ascend to the throne of God King, I will give Helios freedom and personally designate him as the new sun god. Zeus stared at Hyperion seriously. Now is not the time. You can leave here it is. Hyperion looked up at the towering Mount Olympus, his eyes full of despair. Zeus, you have forced me into a dilemma. I have made a promise that I will not participate in this war. And my god king Cronus, he is watching me from the top of Olympus, and he wants me to fight for him. Hyperion closed his eyes. Unfortunately, I can't see my son of God succeeding the sun god of a generation. Brush. A spear burning with blue-black flames fell from the peak of Olympus and directly pierced Hyperion from the top of his head. The divine power of Cronus began to burn Hyperion, which is the fire that can burn the sun. Hyperion's eyes were blurred, and he fell from the sun chariot, turning into an extremely dazzling fireball and falling into the ocean. At the moment of his fall, all the flames on the sun carriage dissipated, and the sun in the sky went out. The world was plunged into complete darkness, and the oceans began to freeze from all directions. The surroundings fell into complete darkness. Only the golden spear in Athena's hand was emitting light. He kept his promise and did not fight, so Cronus executed him. Themis stared at Hyperion, who fell into the sea. This may be the last dignity of the main god of Olympus. Let's move forward. Zeus stretched his fingers to the sky, and thunder condensed from his fingertips. Huge thunderclouds and glass formed a huge city, and the main god-level magic, Thunder City, appeared. Zeus crossed the city of thunder. Countless black dragons and white dragons flew around and flew towards the peak of Olympus. The speed of the thunderstorm city was extremely fast, and the gate of heaven was getting closer and closer. There was only a hint of dawn there, but there was no light at all, because the sun had already been extinguished. The king of gods found the enemy. Athena roared, and countless harpies appeared in the sky, and their bodies were burning with blue-black flames. This is the legion exclusively for Cronus. Fight. After Zeus created 4 legions, he obtained the Heart of Legion, and he can command and deploy the army in his heart, like driving with his arms. Countless black dragon knights suddenly burst into blue light in their hands, and the magic giant sword burst out from their hands. Countless arcane runes flowed around the giant sword, and the black dragon spit out countless flames, blowing towards the harpies. The harpy flapped its wings violently, and an endless storm was born, sweeping towards the black dragon army. When the storm touches the flame is instantly ignited, and the endless flames illuminate the entire night sky of Olympus. In the bright light, countless harpies burned all over their bodies. They threw themselves on the shoulders of the black dragon knight, opened their huge mouths, and their sharp teeth shone coldly, biting off the knight's head in 10 bites. In the sky, the heads of countless knights fell. The remaining black dragon knights stretched out the giant swords in their hands together. Pooh! Countless feathers exploded in the sky, and tens of thousands of harpies were pierced through by the giant sword. And mana continued to erode from the wound. In an instant, 10,000 harpies exploded at the same time, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. The white dragons behind them stopped in the air, and they instantly turned into white dragon arcanists. With Kali as the center, the power of infinite magic was born, and a magic formation appeared in the air. Kali held the arcane staff, and the infinite arcane runes came out. The center of her eyebrows burst out, and the runes flowed through the world, forming a huge protective shield, covering all the black dragon knights. Ding! Another group of harpies attacked. They opened their mouths in the air, and bit their teeth directly towards the knight's neck. The arcane protection energy on the knight exploded, and the harpy's teeth touched. Instant smash. Star power. Pisces. Zeus looked at the starry sky and mobilized his divine power. The Pisces in the sky, the stars began to move, and the infinite starlight turned into clear drizzle and fell from the sky. This drizzle contains strong healing power, and the wounds of the knights are gradually recovering under the watering of this drizzle. This is the power of the constellation that Zeus obtained from Pisces. It is most suitable for legion battles. Infinite arcane lights flickered in the air, and all the harpies were killed in an instant. All the black dragon knights were covered with demon blood, with a dark color in the bright red, pointing their swords at the same time to the sky. Cronus, your son is back, Zeus roared into the air. The authority of the court of God belongs to me today. The whole Olympus is trembling. There was an extremely violent rumbling sound, and a part of the Olympus mountains suddenly began to move, forming an extremely huge giant. Xea. Zeus glanced at it, and felt the power of Gaia from the giant of the earth. This is the power of the earth. Themis opened her beautiful eyes, looking at the incomparably huge giant. Gaia is a primitive god. Although Cronus is her son, will she really intervene in this war? Great God King, Métis said, her voice was extremely weak, I am using the all-seeing eye you gave me to stare at this world. Gaia is still sleeping. This giant of the earth should be Gaia lefted to Cronus many years ago. When she wakes up, which side she will stand on is still unknown. At this moment, Themis' voice resounded through the heavens and the earth. My God King! Be careful! The giant of the earth stretched out its huge arms to the sky, and the originally dark night became even darker. Then, the earth began to tremble. Infinity stones fly from the earth, converging into the hands of the giants of the earth. In the distance, 100,000 mountains rose from the ground, and the giant mountains in the darkness were flying in the air, making extremely terrifying roars, and gathered in the hands of the giants of the earth. It calls upon the power of the earth. Let me. Athena let out a roar, and incomparable golden light erupted from her body. Her blonde hair danced wildly, endless stars were burning in her eyes, all the flowers in the world were falling from her body, and a beam of moonlight directly shone down from the sky and fell on her body. Songs of infinite praise sounded, all in praise of victory. The goddess of victory, the bright-eyed daughter, Athena, burst out with all the divine power in her body, and the spear in her hand was like 100,000 suns. The extremely dazzling light illuminated the earth, and instantly, it was like a new sun. Athena turned into a beam of light and rushed directly to the arm of the giant of the earth. 100,000 giant mountains flew into the hands of the giants of the earth, and they were all crushed. Then, they instantly turned into a huge dark planet. The earth giant grabbed the huge Mount Olympus in his left hand, and threw the dark planet in his hand towards Athena with his right hand. The power of 100,000 mountains descended from the sky, as if the 6 zeros of the sky were also sinking. Athena turned into a beam of golden light and hit the planet directly. In an instant, the planet exploded. Countless broken rocks fell like rain and fell into the ocean, stirring up the waves of Hidaka. In the rain of gravel, Athena's blonde hair danced wildly, and the spear in her hand became extremely huge. The golden spear, like a giant mountain, hit the head of the giant on the earth. Boom! An extremely sharp sound sounded, and Athena's spear was deeply inserted into the head of the earth giant. The wind howled, Athena's blonde hair danced wildly, her face was ferocious, and countless rubble exploded around her. Athena shone with golden light all over her body, She landed on the head of the earth giant, grabbed the spear with both hands, stirred it vigorously, and then stepped on the spear. The spear completely sank into the head of the earth giant. The earth giant let out an incomparable scream, and he waved his giant fist, attacking Athena. The starlight in Athena's eyes was shining, and the owl on her shoulder instantly expanded countless times. She jumped on the owl's body, like a white lightning, flew into the air, and avoided the blow. The earth giant punched his head, the whole head was shattered and exploded in the air. Boom! The rain of gravel, 10 times denser than before, fell from the sky. Athena's whole body was hazy with golden light, and the gravel continued to shatter around her, but she was unscathed. Boom! The pitch-black night sky suddenly brightened, and a god fell from the sky. He embraced a huge white pillar in his hands, and his body was burning with blue-black flames. His eyes were full of hatred and killing intent. Atlas. Themis saw Atlas at a glance. This is the child of Clyhen and Iapetos. Clymene and Iapetus had 3 children, Prometheus, the god of prophets and foresight, the god of hindsight, Epimetheus, and Atlas. Prometheus is very clever, so he is the god of foresight. Epimetheus is very stupid, which corresponds to his god position, behind sight. And Atlas inherited his father's incomparable divine power. In the legends of later generations, the god who supports the sky is often not Iapetus, but Atlas. Atlas is the famous strongman of Olympus. He heard the call of Cronus, and with a strong desire for revenge, he came to Olympus to fight against Zeus. That's, Themis' eyes widened and her pupils narrowed, that's the pillar supporting the sky. The pillar that was supposed to support the sky in the far west was actually used as a weapon by Atlas. Suddenly, the pillar supporting the sky in Atlas' hand shrank rapidly, and the divine power contained in it became more and more concentrated, and then, the giant pillar in his hand attacked Athena. The giant pillar seemed to have passed through time, it was too fast to be seen, and it seemed to teleport to appear beside Athena, hitting her abdomen hard. Athena let out a scream, and her body rolled crazily in the air, like a falling meteor. The earth giant let out a roar, he grabbed Athena, and squeezed it in his hand. Atlas' eyes were on fire, his face was extremely ferocious and terrifying, and he was crying. On his left shoulder was a heap of ashes jumping, the ashes of Clymene. In the past, Clymene was defeated by Zeus, she sacrificed everything to Cronus, and finally her ashes were thrown into the sea by Prometheus. And the ashes jumped in the sea, traveled thousands of miles, and came to Mount Olympus, where they were found by Atlas. Atlas' left shoulder is the head of a dead god, it is Iapetus. A spear pierced his head directly, and he is dead, and his longing for Clymene is still going on. Tears kept streaming from the corners of Iapetus' eyes. Atlas's face was extremely terrifying, he shed tears, watching Zeus. The creatures that killed my priest and mother, taste my wrath. My wrath will tear you apart. Atlas suddenly became extremely huge, and the pillar supporting the sky in his hand also swelled. In an instant, he was as huge as Mount Olympus. Point. Kill her. Kill everything, Atlas roared towards the earth with a ferocious face. In his roar, the earth giant who lost its head seemed to be resurrected, and his hands suddenly exerted force, trying to crush Athena to death. Click. Click. Athena's body burst into countless divine power barriers, and the pieces shattered. Her face was full of blood, and she stared fiercely at the giant in front of her. Justice and excommunication, Themis's body was full of divine power, and the huge silver scales behind him floated between the sky and the earth. Countless ice and snow floated down from the sky, exuding crystal-clear karma. A blizzard fell from the sky, and in the light of the snow, a long silver sword was held in the hands of Themis, and she attacked the earth giant with one sword. She wants to save Athena. Doll, Atlas was burning with hot blue-black flames. He waved the huge pillar in his hand, and smashed it towards Themis. His divine power grows every moment. At the same time, holes are constantly appearing in his body, turning into black ash, floating in the air. Atlas accepted the power of Cronus, he kept burning his divine body, and gained 10. His divine power is twice as strong as his own, and at this last moment, his power completely surpassed his father and mother. Themis stretched out her palm in the air, pointing at Atlas, her hair was fluttering, and the silver light was shining all over her body. The silver scales behind her quickly inflated, flew into the air, and collided with the giant pillar of Atlas. Ding! An extremely violent sound came, and the surrounding land of 100,000 kilometers burst into gaps with the loud noise of 4.5. Both eyes, mouth and nose of Themis were bleeding at the same time, and the blood stained her flawless blindfold. She retreated quickly, and the silver scale turned into powder in an instant, floating in the air. Themis retreated 100,000 miles in an instant. The silver scales were her source of divine power, connected with her mind and soul. The blow with Atlas just now shocked her mind. Themis fell to the ground. She stood firm and looked directly at the huge Atlas. Then, she took off her blindfold. She revealed her extremely empty eye sockets, gurgling blood flowing from it. If Themis wearing the blindfold is a cold as ice and extremely beautiful goddess, she looks extremely terrifying and hideous when the blindfold is removed. Boom! The divine power of Themis exploded crazily, and the blood in her eye sockets was like a fountain. She tilted her head back, and the blood in her eyes spurted out 10,000 meters high, straight to the sky. In the endless night, 2 pillars of blood with a height of 10,000 meters shot straight into the sky. The divine power fluctuated, and endless phantoms appeared behind Themis. Her hair instantly became snow white, the white hair danced wildly, and her battle robe was hunting. Boom! The divine blood of Themis fell into the ocean, and there was a loud noise, and countless blood-colored icebergs were born in the ocean. 100,000 blizzards fell from the sky, all of which were stained red with divine blood. In the blood-red iceberg and blizzard, the silver sword in Themis' hands became extremely huge, and the source of her divine power appeared, and 12 candlesticks were burning on a judgment stand, burning like oil. A candlestick, burn out completely. 2 candlesticks, completely burnt out. 9 candlesticks, burn out. Holding a 100,000-meter-long silver sword in both hands, Themis exploded with infinite divine power and attacked Atlas. This is the power of the Lord God. Themis clenched her silver teeth, and the silver sword turned into infinite silver light. The silver sword of Themis is like a 100,000-meter-long moon, slashing across the air. The surrounding space is shattered, and the infinite divine power dances in the air with the energy of chaos. Boom! Blue-black flames exploded from Atlas' whole body. His eyes were red, and he cried unceasingly. Endless grief poured out violently, and the sound of screams resounded throughout the world. The ashes on his shoulders throbbed wildly, and the head of Iapetus was crying. At this moment, Iapetus' head opened its eyes. He stared at his blood-red eyes, swallowed Clemine's ashes in one gulp, and then merged into Atlas' body. Countless black cavities appeared all over Atlas' body, and pieces exploded. His divine body gradually disappeared and turned into countless black powders, and every time he exploded, his divine power increased by 50%. Atlas received the divine power of Cronus, burned the divine body, and received the power of the remains of Iapetus and Clemene, condensing endless grief. This made the divine power continue explosion. Atlas' lower body exploded, his eyes, mouth and nose all exploded. His body, left arm, all exploded. In the air, only his right arm was left, holding the huge pillar supporting the sky. Endless black powder fell in the air, and Atlas burned all the divine body and the source of divine power, which finally made him, in an instant, an infinitesimal time, only 1/1,000,000th of a bird's song, breaking through the 12th level divine power of the main god, reaching the divine power of the divine king. In the sky, the remaining right arm of Atlas grasped the pillar supporting the sky, waving towards Themis. Boom! Atlas' right arm exploded completely. He had completely disappeared, and his last strength was all condensed into that giant pillar. The long sword of Themis was connected to the giant pillar supporting the sky. Click! The silver sword snapped instantly, and the giant pillar fell down. Themis gritted her silver teeth tightly, her silver white hair all exploded, and she supported the huge pillar supporting the sky with both hands. An incomparably terrifying force struck. Click! Themis' hands were broken, her legs were broken, she fell to her knees. Burning endless divine power all over her body, a gigantic barrier of divine power appeared and instantly withstood the giant pillar. On Mount Olympus, the giants of the earth continued to increase their power. Athena spurted blood from her mouth, and the bones of the gods shattered. Finally, Zeus burst out with divine power. Start fighting. Zeus had been watching the battle between Athena and Themis before and did not help. Because his purpose is to make these two goddesses fight for themselves and consume the power of Cronus' god court. Save your strength to the end and fight Cronus. In order to seize the authority of the gods, watching Themis and Athena get injured in the battle, keep your own strength until the end. Zeus can do it. And that's what he's supposed to do. What's more, he also has a golden olive, a treasure that can quickly heal the gods. Thunder erupted all over Zeus, and on the city of thunder, the 12 turrets turned their directions together, aiming at the earth giant on the giant mountain. Infinite thunderballs danced wildly on the Thunder City, and finally injected them all into the turret. Boom! 12 turrets were launched together, and the huge recoil caused Thunder City to retreat 10,000 meters. At the moment when the extremely huge thunder cannon blasted out, Zeus turned into a thunderbolt and flew straight to the giant pillar of Atlas. Boom! The source of divine power in Zeus' body began to burn. There are 12 white pillars of faith in Zeus' body, which are condensed by the power of infinite faith. At this moment, the power of faith in a giant pillar is completely burned, and the golden and white light shrouds Zeus' hands, and the giant pillar is raised. Themis has passed out, her hands and feet are all broken. Zeus took a look at her, put her into the thundercloud, and summoned the golden olive to heal her wounds. Boom! The sound of infinite explosions sounded, 12 thunder cannons hit the earth giant, and the earth giant exploded every inch of its body. The huge golden thunderball directly pierced through the body of the earth giant, and he turned into countless gravels and fell down. And Athena had passed out and fell from the sky. Zeus summoned the thunder, grabbed Athena, and put him into his own thundercloud to heal her wounds. The two goddesses helped themselves to defeat Atlas, the giants of the earth, and the infinite harpies. So now, only Cronus is left. Cronus. Zeus stared at the peak of Olympus, and the infinite blue and black flames exploded in the air. Your divine court, only Atlas and the giants of the earth, are you still willing to fight for you? Where are your former main gods? Why did they abandon you? Lonely king, you are not qualified to rule this god's domain. I, Zeus, your son is back, and I challenge you to show the world who is, truly, ruler of Olympus, king of sky, earth, and sea. Boom! Infinite blue and black flames fell in the air, and the whole sky was burning. And Zeus summoned an extremely powerful thunder and flew upwards. Like the blue-black flame sky, against the golden earth. In the sky, countless tiny red dots appeared, and then thousands of red dots, and then millions of blood-red eyes. The Gargoyle Army, Cronus' direct army. The time to be loyal to the King of Gods has come. Bylong Kali's face was covered with blood 780. She held up the magic scepter in her hand. The enemy is coming. Stop them. Let our god King Zeus step towards the gate of Olympus Kading. Zeus mobilized the heart of the legion, and in an instant, all his thoughts were transmitted to the minds of all the legions. Countless black dragon knights split into a circle in an instant, surrounding all the white dragon arcanists. Then, the power of starlight around Zeus turned, and the constellation Scorpio in the sky began to move. The power of infinite stars descended from the sky and landed on Zeus' legion, and they disappeared in an instant. The power from Scorpio, the invisibility of a large-scale legion. Zeus' legion gathered together, like a sharp arrow, rushing towards countless gargoyles. The black dragon knight drew out his sword, with the blade facing outwards, while the white dragon arcanist summoned the power of arcane power and poured it on the sword. They combined and charged forward together. Pooh! Countless gargoyles were stabbed alive, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. Zeus clenched his fists. Infinite thunder erupted from his hands, condensed, and finally turned into a small thunderball. The brilliance was extremely restrained, but the divine power it contained was terrifying. With a wave of his hand, Zeus threw a thunderball at the endless gargoyle army, and then turned into a thunderbolt, rushing to the peak of Olympus. Boom! The thunderball exploded in the center of countless gargoyles, 100,000 gargoyles, all turned into powder, and fell into the water with a crash. Zeus, bad son, how dare you defy your father? The body of Cronus appeared on the summit of Olympus. For thousands of years, Lu Nuo looked at each other once. King sees king. Kronos was extremely huge, burning around the blue and black flames that never extinguished, holding a dark sickle. Pow of his horrible divine sounds let all the flowers and trees of 100,000 kilometers wither instantly. You are fighting against the God King of Olympus. I am the God King of Olympus, the eternal God King, Cronus. He raised his right arm high, and an infinite blue-black flame ignited in the extremely dark sky. The firelight illuminated the entire land, and the ice in the frozen ocean began to melt. The flames gathered in his hands and condensed into a huge spear. Zeus's eyes widened, and this was the trick. Cronus had bombarded and killed the main god of Olympus a million kilometers away. Boom! The spear pulled the tail flame of 100,000 miles and attacked Zeus. The golden light around Zeus exploded, and his speed increased tenfold. Brush! Zeus dodged the spear and continued flying towards the summit of Olympus. Evil son! Cronos opened his eyes as huge as stars, and above the sky, the flames burned again. 100,000 spears appeared in the air, like a giant net. One arm grew out behind Cronos, and 5 arms grew out of 5 fingers. In an instant, 100,000 arms appeared behind him, infinite giant hands, densely packed, filling the sky. He grabbed the 100,000 spears, and the spears ignited violent flames, and threw them in the direction of Zeus. Ding! The incomparably intense sound of metal tremors struck, and a shield appeared beside Zeus, shining golden light. Aegis, Aegis. It seems to have a spirituality, circling around Zeus, automatically blocking all attacks. 100,000 spears, fall. The sound of metal interlacing and trembling resounded through the sky, and the density was like 100,000 rainstorms falling in an hour. 100,000 spears were all resisted by Aegis. They left one small white spot after another on Aegis, and then the small white spots dissipated. Boom! A golden light flew over the peak of Olympus, as if reaching the end of the sky. Jin Lei fell from the sky. Amidst the endless thunder, Zeus appeared from the golden light. The peak of Mount Olympus, the highest power hub in this god's domain. The place where the first rays of morning light, the first rays of sunshine and moonlight shine. The highest place between heaven and earth. The place where the God King and his court of God are. Infinite white flowers bloom in the garden, and an extremely huge statue of Cronus stands in it. The divine power is extremely strong, and the infinite divine power is constantly transformed into fairies and beasts. Exotic flowers and plants are blooming all over Olympus, and there are countless huge palaces in the distance. Since his birth, Zeus set foot in this divine domain for the first time. Zeus looked at everything in front of him and took a deep breath. Olympus. I'm back. This time, I will take everything from you with my own hands. Boom. Zeus didn't say much, and his infinite divine power erupted from his divine body. A gigantic phantom appeared behind Zeus. A rose-gold ocean, setting off monstrous waves. The waves contain countless star-colored particles, dancing with countless golden thunders. 11 white pillars of faith stand among them, echoing with a golden olive tree. Beside the golden olive tree, there are 12 golden daffodils and 1 golden iris blooming. But Zeus mobilized not his own divine power, but the divine power of his mother Rhea. In the past, before Rhea went to the ranch paradise, she bestowed all her divine power and the moves formed by her longing for the child for thousands of years, and bestowed on Zeus a. Looking at the sword of longing, infinite white gas bursts. White air emerged from Zeus's body like a storm, and they swept into shape, condensing into an incomparably huge storm sword. The blade is a whirling storm, which contains the powerful power of the Earth Mother. Rhea is the second-generation Earth Mother. This is... Cronos' indifferent eyes showed surprise for the first time in thousands of years. He was prepared for the strength of Zeus, and any move Zeus used would not surprise him, but, did the giant sword contain the power of his wife? His wife Rhea, after swallowing the last child, had a big fight with herself, and then left the court forever. Cronus knew that she lived above the 9 heavens, and was accompanied by countless stone lions. Zeus found Rhea, and Rhea gave all the divine power to Zeus? Cronus. Zeus held the giant sword of storm. Did you hear the wailing and sighing sound in this giant sword? It's all about a mother who has missed her child endlessly for thousands of years. You can experience the pain of this longing for a second, every minute. She's your wife, Rhea, now, Pay the price for everything you have done. Zeus's body exploded with infinite divine power, and 100,000 thunderbolts roared at the same time. He turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed towards Cronus. In the source of Zeus' divine power, the golden iris is shining, and in the blink of an eye, Zeus's speed has increased tenfold. A giant sword aimed at Cronus's lower abdomen and stabbed it. Zeus's target is very clear, the body of Cronus and his brothers and sisters. Rescue them, then, let them join the fight, and overthrow Cronus. Infinite cries came, and the pain of that thick longing condensed into substance. A mother, looking at the child in the distance. The illusion is generated, and this illusion stands on the top of Olympus, and the incomparable feeling of licking the calf contained in it makes the living beings in all directions cry bitterly. Cronos stared at the attacking sword indifferently, his eyes rolled, but he didn't escape. Boom! Looking at the sword of yearning bombarded Cronos' lower abdomen. He clutched his lower abdomen and knelt down in front of Zeus. Since his birth, Cronus, who had never shown any weakness to any gods, including his father Uranus, knelt down in front of Zeus. He covered his lower abdomen, looked at Zeus with a ferocious expression, and opened his mouth. He grinned grimly. Wzeus, is this your plan? Free your brothers and sisters? It's been tens of thousands of years now, so you long to see them, so I will return them to you. Cronus opened his big mouth, and a head of Cronus protruded out of the big mouth. The second head opened its mouth again, and out of it emerged the third head of Cronus. But in an instant, 100,000 heads were piled up layer by layer, with countless huge mouths and eyes, showing a fierce light, staring at Zeus, making the scalp numb. Disgusting monster. Such a horrible and hideous appearance. What qualifications do you have to become the ruler of Olympus? Zeus was full of thunder, and millions of lightning flashed around him. Thunder. Zeus' weapon, appear. The thunder fused with the spear of freedom can transform into the most suitable form for battle in an instant, and it has become a giant axe. Zeus grabbed the countless heads of Cronus with one hand. God's good power was condensed in his right hand, facing Cronus, approve. Boom! Cronus was directly split in half, but there are countless black filaments connecting the two broken bodies. Endless blue-black flames were burning in his eyes, a terrifying and ferocious face. Divine power hasn't dropped at all? Zeus, want to meet your siblings? Then come and see them. Cronus's 100,000 heads stacked on top of each other opened their mouths together. Countless huge mouths opened, and a golden particle burst out of it. A beautiful girl fell to the ground. There were 3 phantoms shining behind her. Even though she was still in a coma, she still exuded an incomparably noble aura. This is Hera, the wife after Zeus, the queen of Olympus, and the guardian of all female creatures and marriages, Hera. Ha 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 ha, Cronus is laughing wildly. Zeus felt. After spitting out Hera, Cronus's divine power did not decrease, but increased dramatically. Cronus' maniacal laughter resounded through the earth. Do you want to meet your siblings? Cronus' maniacal laughter resounded throughout the world. He opened his huge mouth, made 4 puffs, and spit out 4 more babies. 2 men and 2 women. After the 4 babies fell to the ground, their divine power surged and exploded, like Athena, and they instantly turned into adult bodies. Zeus, Cronus's eyes were burning with flames, and he said every word. Do you think that making me spit out these children is weakening my strength? On the contrary, over the years, half of my divine power has been controlling them. Now, the black sickle in Cronus's hand burst into endless blue-black flames, and the whistling breath of death rushed towards his face. Zeus, I will show you the true power of the God King. The weapon of Cronos is a black sickle. When he overthrew Uranus's court, Gaia created it by collecting all the hardest ores on the earth. And his divine power is growing violently. For thousands of years, Cronus shed the shackles in his body and gained full power for the first time. A black sickle cut down from the sky. On the sickle, the river of time and the river of destiny emerged. The river of time stopped flowing at this moment, and the heaven and earth fell into a deathly silence. The time of all living beings stopped at this moment. Only Cronus' sickle was in Kongji City. And the river of fate is surging, and countless threads of fate are intertwined in the air. In the river of fate, an illusion appears. Zeus was cut in half by a sickle. and his soul was turned into countless fragments, flying to the world. The power of the gods. The first step 823 is to be able to shatter space. The second step is to be able to repair space. The third step is to be able to turn illusion into reality. And the fourth step is to be able to influence the river of time and the river of fate, the two rivers beyond all. The scythe is full of endless murderous intent, and 100,000 phantoms are formed behind it, all of which are the appearance of Zeus' tragic death. Cronus. Thunder burst out in Zeus' eyes, and finally, at this moment, all the divine power in Zeus' body exploded. The 11 white pillars transformed by the power of faith are shattered. The rose-gold sea is boiling, infinite red water droplets accompanied by star fragments are dancing wildly over Olympus. 10 million golden thunders flashed and appeared, and the golden thunders formed a huge net thousands of miles wide, covering the world. They sounded thunder at the same time, and when the living beings in the world heard the loud noise, their ears burst into blood, countless weak a creature whose heart has stopped beating. 12 golden daffodils began to shine. Suddenly, Zeus' divine power increased tenfold. The golden irises blossomed into infinite flowers, which turned into reality from the source of divine power. Immediately, the 100,000-mile ocean centered on Mount Olympus was filled with golden irises, and they burst out with infinite golden light, covering the entire dark night sky as reflected like day. Zeus's weapon thunder appears in his hands. His thunder is fused with the spear of freedom, and can change any shape, but now, it has not changed. It is an extremely pure thunder, CFCD. Thousands of thunderbolts fell from the sky, hitting Cronus directly. Boom! The whole Mount Olympus is shaking, the infinite ocean sends out monstrous waves, and the seawater pours down on the land. Thousands of thunderbolts condensed into one in the air and bombarded Cronos' head. Cronos was stunned instantly. He staggered, the black scythe in his hand came out, and flew into the air at high speed. The flame on the scythe burned the water vapor in the air to draw an incomparably gorgeous rainbow-like trajectory. With the blessing of the golden iris flower, Zeus's speed is faster than time. In the long river of time floating in the air, the water flow began to reverse, and in an instant, like a thunderbolt, Zeus appeared in front of Cronus, and the thunder in his hand lingered on his body, blasting fiercely at Cronus. Out. Boom! Cronos' head was smashed to pieces, and his flesh and blood began to burn in the air, turning into countless black gargoyles, dancing in the air. But in an instant, a new head emerged from Cronus' shoulder, and Zeus punched again. But when a thunderbolt hit, Zeus blasted out 10,000 punches, and Cronus retreated step by step, giving birth to 10,000 heads in succession. Countless flesh and blood piled up to the peak of Olympus, which was as high as 100 meters. The minced meat of Cronus, the blood of God, and countless eyes turned into puddles of fleshy mud, and the entire peak of Olympus it's like a bloody hell. Every time Zeus punched, he felt that Cronus's divine power was slightly reduced, and the weakened divine power made up for it in an instant. At this time, Zeus, be careful. Zeus heard the scream of Métis. He raised his head, and there were already millions of black gargoyles flying around. On the 100-meter-high mud, Cronus staggered, like he was drunk after drinking fine wine. His star-like eyes looked at Zeus, and then, 2 eyeballs fell out of their sockets. Pooh! A gap opened at the top of his head, and Cronus's flaming body began to separate. The skin began to peel off. In an instant, countless skins fell on the ground, and Cronus's skin all fell off, leaving only flesh and blood all over his body. His flesh and blood seemed to have wisdom. Every piece was trembling, and every place was dripping blood. And his divine power is still soaring. My son, you have seen my true face. Unfortunately, today is not the day you are destined to die. Cronus's voice was like howling 100,000 creatures. I have seen all your deaths in the river of fate, and I will choose the most shameful death for you. You can have Olympus for a while, but it's only for a while, not forever. Ha 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 ha. Cronus laughed wildly. Like rain, he merged into the earth and disappeared. Zeus's eyes burst into thunder, and he shot at the ground, and found that Cronus's divine body suddenly turned into countless tiny particles, wandering over the entire land. Even if it destroys this land, I will create a new land for the living creatures of the world. Zeus's eyes were burning with anger. He raised his right hand high, and the infinite divine power was condensed in his hand. This punch would overthrow the entire land. Don't do this, God King. Swipe. A void was torn apart in an instant, and a pale goddess appeared from it. She jumped out of the void and landed on the ground. She grabbed Zeus with her pale and thin hands. She raised her eyes and stared at Zeus with her beautiful eyes. It's Métis. Don't do this, God King. You forced Cronus to vomit out his unborn children, your brothers and sisters, but this actually liberated his divine power. I never thought that for thousands of years, Cronus could only use half of the divine power, and the rest of the divine power is all controlling the children in his body. This time he has been liberated and integrated into the earth. He is going to find Earth Mother Gaia. Earth Mother Gaia is his mother and his most powerful pillar. He will make a comeback soon. So I will completely destroy this land and destroy Cronus. No, Métis eagerly said. The locality of the earth is Gaia. She is still sleeping. Gaia is a primitive god, and you currently have no strength to fight against her. Moreover, the Gaia sundial will really help Cronus, this is still unknown. Moreover, you have received the most powerful help, your brothers and sisters. Métis pointed his white and slender fingers into the distance. When they were still in the form of babies, Cronus had to allocate half of his divine power to control them. Now that they are free, what a power that would be. Wake them up, make them loyal to you, make them fight for you. You have a whole divine court. Zeus looked into the distance and saw the 5 gods sleeping on the ground. One is his eldest sister, one of the 3 virgin gods of Olympus, the goddess of the family, and the god Hestia. One is his second sister and one of his future wives, Demeter, goddess of harvest and agriculture. One is his third sister, the future god Empress, Hera. One is his elder brother, the future Poseidon. One is his second brother, Hades, the future god of Hades. They are still sleeping, but infinite divine power surges out of their bodies. Drop. The options appear. Option 1. Wake up your siblings and make them submit to you. Obtain reward. 10 million original power. Option 2. Seal all your brothers and sisters to prevent them from competing with you for the position of God King. Reward. 10 million chaos power. The options appeared again. Zeus didn't think much about it and chose option 1. Not only because the original power in the reward is far beyond the power of chaos. And the brothers and sisters in front of my eyes will be a huge helper for me to ascend to the position of God King. What's more, there is also the future god Empress, the most noble goddess of Olympus, Hera. Zeus had 7 wives, Métis, Eurynome, Themis, Mnemosyne, Laodiceter and Hera. Demeter and Hera are at hand. Among them, Hera crowned Olympus with her incomparably noble and elegant demeanor. In other words, Hera is not the most beautiful or the most powerful among the many goddesses of Olympus, nor is her relationship with Zeus the best. But her nobility allowed her to become the queen of Olympus. Hera's thick golden hair spread on the ground, her neck was as white as the purest swan. With her eyes closed, she fell asleep quietly, revealing an astonishing nobility and beauty. At this moment, an incomparably gorgeous rainbow fell from the sky, and the rainbow turned into a family. She wears an iridescent robe with countless shining stars. There is a pair of colorful wings on the back, which stretch out lightly, as if a breeze can blow her away. Great goddess, you have finally appeared. The girl landed gently on the ground. She folded the wings behind her, knelt on the ground, and kissed Hera's white and transparent feet. Zeus nodded and looked at the girl in front of him. She was the rainbow goddess Elis. She is a god who was born with the heaven and the earth, and has a noble lineage. Her birth was accompanied by an eternal mission, as the messenger of Hera, to promulgate Hera's edict to all directions. This also shows how noble Hera is because only the king and queen of the gods need messengers, so that the messengers can spread their will all over the world. Zeus himself could promulgate his edicts through thunder and incarnation. Later, he also had a special messenger, Hermes, one of the 12 main gods of Olympus in later generations. Elis is the messenger of Hera. Whenever a rainbow appears in the world, it is the messenger of Hera conveying her edict. Accompanied by Elis' kiss, countless songs appeared, and 100 white swans flew up. They flew in the air, and their white feathers fell down. Each feather was stained with Elis' rainbow light, and the colorful feathers formed a beautiful blanket, and Hera gently held it up. Zeus felt the incomparably brilliant light and vast divine power erupting from Hera's body. This divine power contained infinite majesty, just like the divine power of Zeus, which could make ordinary creatures feel infinite admiration and respect. This is another proof of the Queen of God. The light and divine power around Hera gradually condensed, and finally turned into 3 golden mirrors. There was a mirror above her head, reflecting Hera's astonishingly beautiful appearance. That appearance was full of youthful vigor, innocence. The Holy Trinity. Zeus mused, or rather, it was half the Holy Trinity. The Trinity is a unique feature of this class of god-kings. After Zeus practiced extremely hard and fought, he faintly had the shadow of the Trinity. As for Hera, when she was born, she faintly appeared as a Trinity. This is another proof of the God Queen. Hera is destined to be the God Queen. These 3 golden mirrors represent the lives of all women in the world, girls, wives and widows. She can switch between these 3 identities and 3 godheads at will. Now, the image in the mirror behind Hera is a young girl, which shows that she is just like a young girl, pure and flawless. And when she became a wife, she possessed the gentle and considerate godhead of a wife, and at the same time, there was also monstrous jealousy. Envy. Zeus couldn't help smiling wryly. Of course he knew that half of the stories about Zeus in later generations must be about Zeus being promiscuous outside, while Hera was furious, jealous and crazy. Hera did not allow Leto to give birth to a son of God for her, and she forbade the entire continent of Olympus from accepting Leto, leaving poor Leto with no place to stand. Later, Hera was stunned by her jealousy, and even conspired with Poseidon to overthrow Zeus's throne. Her plot was thwarted by Zeus, who hung her on the top of Olympus. Whip her as punishment. However, there must be an explanation here. The relationship between Zeus and Hera is not as simple as a simple couple. Because Zeus is the king of gods and Hera is the queen of gods. The relationship between them represents the relationship between all the male and female creatures in the entire god realm. If Hera didn't get angry at Zeus's promiscuity, then all the female creatures in the world would feel numb to their husband's misbehavior. Mess. In other words, Hera's anger was justified and justified. That's why, even though Zeus of later generations was extremely annoyed by Hera's revenge, he had nothing to do with her. However, that's all for later. There are more important things ahead. Zeus saw other brothers and sisters on earth. One is his eldest sister, the eldest of 5 children, Hestia. She is one of the future 12 gods of Olympus, Vesta. She is in charge of all household affairs and is a very low-key goddess. She is also in a deep sleep, and her divine power is slowly recovering. The divine power is very powerful, but not aggressive, which is a feeling of peace of mind. A warm flame ignited in her hands, and a vision of a hearth appeared behind her, with the crackling sound of burning wood. Every god has its own source of divine power. It seems that the source of Hestia's divine power is this hearth. This hearth does not look great, but it is indispensable, and will appear in the families of all living beings in the world, accompanying them to multiply from generation to generation. The second is his second sister, the future goddess of agriculture, Demeter. Demeter's divine power has also awakened. After the war, Olympus was almost completely destroyed by the divine power of Cronus and Zeus. The huge mountaintop is almost cracked and crumbling. Divine power emerged from Demeter's body, and they slowly repaired Olympus. Around her, a golden wheat field grows. Countless ears of wheat spread out, gently supporting Demeter. Next to the wheat field, a sacred tree grew out, and all the fruits in the world were hung in the emerald green leaves. The myriad fruit tree that can grow all the fruits in the world. Wheat fields and 10,000 fruit trees, this makes people feel the power of endless life and prosperity. It really is Demeter, the future god of agriculture. Demeter was in charge of agriculture and, in the early days of Olympus, she was also the richest god. Because the world has not yet been enlightened, and the spiritual intelligence of the creatures is not yet developed, almost all the sources of wealth are agriculture. And Demeter, who is in charge of agriculture, is naturally the richest goddess. When the creatures in the world continued to multiply and grow, civilization gradually improved, and commerce began to appear. Demeter was not so rich. Then Zeus looked to his brother. The sound of endless ocean tides sounded from his body, the future god of the ocean, Poseidon. And Poseidon's divine power is also gradually awakening, and the sound of the rolling tide is rumbling around. He has short blonde hair, a powerful body, and a firm face. the divine power condensed into a blue crown on top of his head, as if he was already the master of the ocean. Beside him is a thin god with pale complexion, white hair, and emaciated bones. His divine power was also gradually recovering, and black breaths of death erupted all over his body. He is another brother of Zeus, the future lord of the underworld, Hades. Zeus looked up at the sky, and countless black dead spirits flew towards the peak of Olympus from all directions. Tens of thousands of undead were flying around in the air, making deafening cries and screams. The undead are a mass of black gas, they have no eyes, but Zeus feels that they are all watching Hades in the hall. Hades is their master and their return. Null, there is no underworld in this world, and the dead have nowhere to go, and the appearance of Hades means that the souls of the dead in this world finally have a home. Zeus thought for a moment, the thunder in his hand shone, covering Poseidon and Hades. A layer of gold covered their whole bodies, and their recovery speed of divine power suddenly slowed down. Zeus put them into his thundercloud. In this way, Poseidon and Hades still need a long time to wake up. Zeus knew in his heart that these two brothers were both helpers in troubles. Their divine power is very powerful, and they will help themselves to overthrow Cronus, but they will never obediently give up the position of God-King to Zeus. In history, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades decided the ownership of the God-King through lottery, but the lottery is only superficial, and it is actually a contest of strength. To make these two brothers obey him, in essence, he still has to overwhelm them in terms of strength. Zeus is now stronger than these two brothers, but not enough to crush them. In this way, they still will not obey Zeus. Cronus went to find Gaia, the mother of the earth, and there was still some time before the decisive battle with Cronus. During this time, Zeus needs to continue to improve his strength. If they crush Poseidon and Hades in terms of strength, they will obey themselves. After placing Poseidon and Hades, Zeus looked up and suddenly found that Hera had awakened. She has an extremely beautiful face and a pair of bright star-like eyes. She has a pale complexion, a dusty temperament, and a peerless beauty. Her figure is petite and exquisite, with a golden chain wrapped around her pale bare feet, and her ruthless face has a soft light like white jade. 3 golden mirrors are swimming slowly behind her, and she holds a golden dagger in her hand. Hera stared coldly at the goddess of agriculture who was still sleeping, her sister Demeter. Her eyes burst out with fierceness and violence, and she raised the dagger in her hand to kill her sister. Hera is the queen of the gods, but she is not the only one of the god kings. Not long after she was born, she felt threatened by other goddesses. Her sister, Demeter, will also share the love of the god kings. The mirror behind Hera swam suddenly, and suddenly her personality changed from girl to widow, and her divine power increased tenfold. 100 swans sang in unison in the sky, and the dagger in her hand turned into an infinite guanghua, stabbed Demeter in the throat with the tip of the knife. Thunder flashed in the eyes of Zeus, and a bolt of lightning burst out, hitting Hera's hand, and the golden dagger was instantly blasted to powder. Hera took a step back. She turned her head and saw Zeus with beautiful eyes like thousands of stars. The mirror of Queen Hera began to turn again, and suddenly, her personality changed from widow to girl again, and the fierce and violent look in her eyes disappeared. Who are you? Hera's voice was agile, ethereal, indifferent and ruthless, yet extremely soft and beautiful, captivating. She tilted her head slightly, and the swans in the sky fell obediently, forming a huge white and soft throne, and the rainbow girl Elis stood beside her with her head bowed, supporting Hera to sit on the throne. Hera raised her smooth and slender legs, her toes were as white as transparent, and the golden chain on her ankles was shining. This dirty place has tarnished my nobility. Hera looked around, her beautiful face full of impatience. After the war, Olympus was in ruins, with blood and bones everywhere. 100 white swans stretched out their white wings and surrounded Hera so that she could not see the surrounding scenery. She stared at Zeus with an imperceptible haughty smile on her lips. God, what is in front of you is the daughter of the god King Cronus, the most noble goddess Hera in the world. My father still vomited me out after all. Then, Hera held the white feather throne in her hands and looked at her with a stern expression. Zeus, who are you? I am Zeus, the youngest child of Cronus. I have freed you. Saved me? Hera's beautiful eyes rolled, she raised her white bare feet, and her face showed contempt. Then you are my younger brother, but don't expect me to be grateful to you. No one deserves my thanks. Zeus looked at Hera calmly. You were born with a godhead that is almost Trinity, and the power is close to the rank of the main god. So, who is worthy of you? God King. The current God King is Cronus, he is your father. That doesn't matter. I am destined to be the God Empress, and I will definitely become a partner with the God King. Now, kneel down and meet your God Empress. Hera's eyes sparkled, and her voice suddenly carried the power of infinite sacred majesty, and the violent divine power suppressed the four. She looked at Zeus proudly. The God King and God Queen will rule this God realm, and her words are equal to the authority of the God King. Maybe it's you who should kneel before me. A flame burned in Zeus' heart, not only because of Hera's beauty, but also because of her incomparable nobility. Snowflakes contrast with the cold winter of 100,000 miles. Hera was destined to be mine. Zeus muttered in his heart, and he stepped forward. Drop. The options appear. Option 1. Conquer Hera, Mnemosyne, Demeter and make your marriage complete. Obtain reward. 50 million original power. Option 2. Give up conquering Hera. Reward. 10 million chaos power. Zeus was destined to have 877 wives. Among the 3,000 daughters of Ocean God, the eldest daughter Métis and the youngest daughter Eurynome. The second daughter of the light and shadow god couple, Leto, the future nurturing goddess. Themis, goddess of justice. They have all surrendered to Zeus, and now there is still the future queen Hera, the future goddess of agriculture Demeter, and one of the current 12 main gods, the memory goddess Mnemosyne. Maybe it's you who should kneel before me. Zeus took a step forward, his body erupted with incomparably terrifying divine power. 100,000 golden thunders surrounded his body, and the terrifying coercion rushed to all directions. 100 white swans couldn't bear this terrifying power. They all scattered, the white throne collapsed, and Hera fell to the ground with a startled expression. The rainbow girl Elis wanted to summon the rainbow to let Hera escape, but she was so shocked by the terrifying pressure of Zeus that she fell to her knees involuntarily. That terrifying power, that indescribable aura of a king. A terrifying thought exploded in Elis' mind. Is it the god in front of him? Hera fell to the ground, soil and blood stained her white bare feet. She stood up, her blonde hair fluttering in the wind. She was still staring at Zeus, but her face was not as stern as before, and the golden mirror behind her shifted from girl to wife. She spoke with a warm and pleasant voice. Who the hell are you, God? My name is Zeus, and I am the future king of gods. The future god king. Hera's beautiful eyes widened. The coldness in her eyes had all disappeared, and there was a trace of tenderness in her eyes at this moment. The mirror behind her stopped between the girl and wife. Yes, I challenged Cronus and fought him. He has escaped, and soon I will kill it completely and establish my court. Hera felt the divine power of Zeus silently, which indeed contained the aura of a mighty king. This strong kingly aura impacted her heart, and her eyes gradually became confused. Hera is destined to be the queen of gods, and she is destined to belong to the king of gods. Hera suddenly opened her eyes. She woke up from the confusion of Zeus, and her eyes regained clarity. The mirror behind her started to turn again, leaning towards the girl side. Hera's face showed a sarcasm again. Cronus is infinitely powerful, and he has ruled this god's domain for thousands of years. What qualifications do you have to compete with him? Before Zeus could answer, 100 white swans fell from the sky and reformed a huge white throne with a pair of wings behind it. Hera sat on it, her wings began to flap. After you defeat Cronus and become the true god king, you can come and look for me again. Hera looked at Zeus meaningfully, then, goodbye. Her body exudes majestic divine power, which condenses into a beautiful peacock and lands on her shoulders. The peacock is the symbol of Hera, because the peacock is the most luxurious of all birds. The white throne under Hera flapped its wings and flew to the sky. How could Zeus let Hera go? To perfect your marriage and get rewards, the first step is to conquer Hera. The thunder in the eyes of Zeus was full of thunder. He turned into a flash of lightning, flew to Hera's side suddenly, and grabbed Hera's white arm. There was a flash of killing intent in Hera's eyes. She struggled to break free, but found that her hand was tightly held by Zeus, and she couldn't break free. Let go, you shameless beast. How dare you defile the most noble goddess? Hera's eyes showed a hint of humiliation. Her face was flushed. The peacock feathers on her shoulders exploded, and she raised her sharp beak to peck at eyes of Zeus. Ding! Another incredible scene happened to Hera, but Zeus didn't dodge. The peacock's extremely sharp and shining beak directly pecked Zeus' eyes, but it was as if he had pecked at the hardest gem in the world, and he was unscathed. Zeus grabbed the peacock by the neck and strangled it down. The peacock was connected with Hera's mind, and suddenly, Hera's face was flushed, and she couldn't breathe, and a huge force pinched her neck, as if death was about to come. Zeus shook his hand and threw the peacock away. He grabbed Hera's hair with one hand and pulled Hera's head up fiercely. Hera was finally able to breathe. Her own hair was tightly grasped, and she was forced to raise her head, looking at the extremely tall and majestic Zeus in front of her, with an extremely humiliating expression on her face and tears streaming from her eyes. Shameless beast. Hera gritted her teeth. She mobilized the divine power in her body and condensed a lotus scepter in her hand. The lotus bloomed and burst into infinite light. A crown symbolizing royal power appeared above her head, and a pomegranate tree emerged behind her. Hundreds of thousands of peacocks perched on the pomegranate tree, spreading their luxurious tail wings together, and endless colors bloomed behind Hera. This is the source of Hera's divine power. The scepter and crown represent kingship, the pomegranate represents fertility, and the peacock represents jealousy. Hera gritted her teeth, clenched the lotus scepter in her hand. The petals of the lotus spread out piece by piece. Even the sharpest blade could not compare with it, and blasted towards Zeus' head. Ding! The sound of fierce gold and iron fighting broke out, and Hera's beautiful eyes showed incredible colors. The lotus scepter directly hit Zeus's head, but he was still unscathed. His whole body was covered with a layer of faint golden light. A huge force returned to Hera's hand. Her right arm trembled violently, and the lotus scepter was released from her hand. Is this your counterattack? Hera, let me see what else you have. Use your most ferocious and violent moves to attack me. Follow my orders. Zeus roared. He held Hera's hair tightly, and slammed his palm on her beautiful face. Snapped. Hera screamed. Her face was full of fear. The severe pain made her temporarily stop thinking. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and fell on the ground. The extremely bright red blood flowed on the ground. Hera opened her beautiful eyes wide and her mind was dazed. She looked at the blood on the ground in disbelief. Is this my blood? The most noble daughter in the world was slapped by the god in front of her like this? Snapped. Zeus slapped her again, showing no mercy, and slapped her face again. Hera was shot several meters away and landed on the ground. Her luxurious and white clothes were stained with blood and mud, and her hair was messy. She looked extremely terrified and panicked. She covered her face and stared at Zeus in disbelief. She watched Zeus approaching step by step, and the color of infinite fear rose in her heart. She wanted to escape in a panic, but she couldn't escape at all. Zeus came to her side like thunder, pinched her chin, and lifted her slender body in the air. Hera tried to kick Zeus with her feet, but her supernatural power was like a wounded deer in front of Zeus. Look at me. Zeus pinched her chin. A raging fire ignited in his heart. This is the way to get Hera. Getting Hera is actually very simple, because she is a natural queen of gods. She is destined to marry the king of gods. Before obtaining the position of God King, if you want to get Hera, you can only use strength, Zeus' unique aura of God King, which will make all living beings feel awe, and make Hera succumb. In other words, if it is another god, no matter how powerful it is, as long as it does not have the breath of a God King, Hera will not succumb even if he is beaten to death. Zeus showed a slight smile. Hera, I command you to feel my power. Infinite divine power condensed in Zeus' right fist, surrounded by rolling thunder, and then, Zeus punched Hera's lower abdomen. Hera screamed again. Blood spurted out of her mouth. She was shot hundreds of meters away, and rolled heavily on the ground. #brute. Hera's incomparably pure white skin was covered with blood and mud at the moment, and the incomparably luxurious she looked extremely miserable at the moment. She stood up slowly, and the great pain almost tortured her to death. Her beautiful eyes were full of it was tears, great humiliation and anger enveloped her. Zeus saw that the golden mirror behind Hera began to turn slowly, constantly moving away from wife, and turning to girl. As the mirror turned, Hera's eyes became more and more murderous and angry. She clung to the soil on the ground, trembling all over, and stared at Zeus with terrifying eyes, as if she was about to die with Zeus. It doesn't look like enough. Zeus's heart sank. He turned into a thunderbolt and came to Hera in an instant. The thunder in his hand turned into a golden rope. He stepped on Hera's body and tightened it with the rope, tied her hands. Shameless beast. What are you going to do? Hera struggled crazily, with an extremely humiliated expression on her face. Her anger turned into substance, and streaks of black mist exploded crazily around her. Look at me carefully. Zeus roared, and he hoisted Hera up with a rope, and the thunder in his hand turned into a golden whip, and he lashed towards Hera like a wolf. Pop. Hera closed her eyes tightly. She turned her head away. The endless pain and humiliation tormented her, and made her want to die. The whip fell heavily on her body, leaving an extremely terrifying bloodstain. Hera screamed and trembled violently. Look at me. Zeus swung his whip again. Hera screamed again. The humiliation and pain tormented her, and suddenly she closed her eyes, as if fainted. Golden light erupted from Hera's body, and Zeus felt that her divine power began to grow again. And the golden mirror behind her began to turn. The mirror goes over the girl and widow, and falls on the wife. Hera's original pride, violence, and vicious aura all disappeared, but at this moment, she was as quiet as a spring of water. Zeus put down Hera, called out the golden olive in his body, and healed Hera. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at Zeus. Her eyes are full of tenderness, like the breeze in the evening, like the stars in early spring. Drops, you have conquered, and legislators. To complete the task, still need to conquer. Demeter, Mnemosyne. Among the thunderclouds, Hera woke up. Her face was blushing with happiness, and she leaned on Zeus wearily. Zeus was still asleep. Suddenly, Hera's expression changed. Apart from his own smell, besides his unique kingly aura accompanied by thunder, Zeus actually had other smells. Is the scent of a female creature? Hera's nose twitched, and a sea appeared in her mind. In the sea, two goddesses appeared, and they accompanied Zeus. That was Métis and Eurynome. They have been with Zeus for the longest time, so Zeus has left their scent on him. Hera didn't know who they were, but they were female creatures, and they had been with Zeus for a very long time. Hera felt this. Boom! An unknown fire suddenly ignited from Hera's body, and the mirror behind her began to turn rapidly, changing from wife to widow, almost instantly. Hera stretched out her white and slender legs, and kicked hard on Zeus. Snapped. Zeus opened his eyes and saw Hera, whose face was flushed, with tears hanging from the corners of his eyes, and a hint of hatred hanging from the corner of his mouth, and instantly understood the whole story. That arrives so fast? Isn't the nose too sharp? Zeus? What's the smell on you? Hera stood up, and the mirror behind her turned to the extreme point of widow. In an instant, the original gentle and charming face disappeared, and now her face is extremely hideous and terrifying. This is our first time. You have that kind of filthy smell on your body. How dare you? Hera seemed to have completely forgotten how she was whipped by Zeus 023 not long ago. She gritted her teeth and trembled all over. Infinite black aura erupted from her body, and the black mist condensed into faces. They all looked different. Same, there are mermaids, sirens, harpies, and night elves, but all of them are female faces, and all of them are gnashing their teeth, howling, and crying bitterly. There seemed to be hundreds of thousands of female creatures crying together. They screamed and complained, and the endless resentment seemed to break through the sky. Zeus. 100,000 crying faces were all shattered. Billowing black air condensed into a huge long sword, held in Hera's hand. Her divine power was increasing exponentially. Double, triple, and still going. Hera's fighting power is not very strong, otherwise she would not be easily defeated by Zeus. But at this moment, her combat power far surpassed the usual. It turns out that when she gets angry because of jealousy, her combat power will increase to such a terrifying level. I go. Zeus was very embarrassed. Last night was the first time with Hera. In theory, he hadn't been in love yet. Unexpectedly, Hera sniffed out the smell that had been left behind, and became annoyed about it. This is too fast. Boom. Zeus escaped from the thundercloud, and the thunderbolt flashed in his hand, sealing the thundercloud tightly. Zeus! Hera's extremely sharp cry sounded in the thundercloud. What else can I do? Do you want to beat her up again and make her submit? Hera is the queen of gods and his wife, can't be beaten every day. The relationship with Hera, which had become Zeus's chore, was the enemy. What can I do with housework? Forget it, let Hera calm down. I have more important things to do. Zeus remembered the mission that had appeared before and perfected his marriage. Hera had succumbed to Zeus. There is still Demeter and Mnemosyne. Zeus stepped out of the thundercloud. Mount Olympus has been occupied by Zeus, and his legions are stationed everywhere to clean up the battlefield. Olympus began to recover gradually, restoring its incomparably glorious and magnificent landscape in the past. Zeus saw the golden wheat fields and fruit trees in the distance. Demeter has also woken up. At this moment, she is standing in the wheat field, carefully examining the ears of wheat one by one. She turned her head, found Zeus, and smiled. Zeus. Demeter is different from Athena and Hera. She is not blonde, but has smooth black hair. Compared with the petite Métis and Eurynome, she was very tall, only a little shorter than Zeus, and she was very plump. The gods are affected by the power they wield. Demeter, the plump goddess of agriculture, represents the expectations of the world's creatures for a good harvest. Demeter smiled all over her face, and she walked towards Zeus. The divine power full of life force flowed, condensed into a golden magic wand in her left hand, and condensed a colorful and flowing wheat ear in her right hand. The wand is a golden wand, which can turn any item into gold. It is a symbol of her wealth. The ears of wheat contain the seeds of all things in the world, condensing the power of infinite growth, which is her most original power and symbolizes agriculture. The rolling divine power condensed into a black chariot, pulled by 4 white deer. Demeter looked at the chariot and frowned. With a light tap of the wand in her hand, the entire chariot turned golden, shining extremely brightly. When Demeter was born, the golden wheat field and fruit tree that appeared together unexpectedly rose from the ground, flew through the air, and landed on the chariot. A golden chariot carrying 10,000 fruit trees and a huge wheat field. Demeter boarded the chariot, stretched out his hand with a smile, and Razius also came up. Great God, Demeter said, her body was scented with 10,000 kinds of fruits. The chariot was very wide, but she sat down next to Zeus. Let's take a look at this world. This world will be yours in the future. Unlike Métis' shyness, Themis' resoluteness, and Hera's refusal, Demeter was very proactive. She took Zeus's hand, and her hand was extremely moist. The chariot was flying in the sky. They stood up and looked at the vast land before them. The chariot flies over huge grasslands, high mountains, desert basins, lakes and rivers. Suddenly, Demeter shook his head. She looked at the earth below with a somewhat melancholy expression. The apples are sour, and the ears of wheat are hollow. Vegetables are poor, but fennel and sesame seeds don't exist yet. The olives are dry and have hardly a drop of oil in them. Even the grass for livestock to eat is withered and petite. The flowers for bees to pick are sparse. Great God, Demeter leaned in front of Zeus. She opened her left hand, and in her left hand were colorful ears of wheat. The ears of wheat burst instantly and turned into countless gorgeous particles, dancing in the air. You can't bear the barrenness of this world, can you? This is the ear of wheat that is the source of my divine power, Demeter said softly. My golden magic wand can turn everything into gold, but that doesn't make this god's domain flourish. And this bunch of wheat ears can make everything start to grow, revive, and harvest. Come on. Demeter grabbed Zeus's hand, and the two of them sprinkled the brilliant particles to the earth together. The golden chariot was flying in the air, and a colorful trail of flames followed behind the chariot. Those are the seeds of countless crops. The seeds fell on the ground and penetrated deeply into the soil. Between the heaven and the earth, it began to fill with the breath of all things, full of vitality. In this way, sweet and sour apples will grow on the ground. Wheat ears will bear plump kernels, and olives will be filled with olive oil, which seems to be bursting soon. Demeter said softly. Then Demeter turned, and she looked Zeus in the eye. Great God, you must need my ability? Let me make this barren world rich and rich, okay? Crops are sown in spring and grown in summer. They are harvested in autumn and hidden in winter. Every year is a cycle of reincarnation. Demeter's thick red lips and curled black eyelashes, she is beautiful. She stared at Zeus and said slowly, "Every year, I need to bless all the crops on this land. Great God, you need me, every year." Demeter is that kind of majestic beauty. She is actively pursuing herself. Zeus nodded. The gods rule over specific domains, and they are strongly influenced by this divine power. For example, Hera, she is the patron saint of all female creatures and marriages, so she must retaliate against Zeus's love. Demeter is the goddess of agriculture, and agriculture is closely related to Zeus, who represents kingship, order, and ruler. Crops are in need of loving care and tending. You need a steady sunrise and moonset, you need rain and sunshine. Agriculture needs order, and in a chaotic world without order, agriculture cannot develop at all. So Demeter needs the support of Zeus very much. She was born with an incomparably great affection for Zeus. Drop. You have conquered Dehevor. There is still time until the task is completed. Monet acquiesced. The task reminder sounded from the ear, but Zeus ignored it. Defeng prospers the land, and Zhou Qi's 100,000 wheat seedlings are rooted into the soil. A chariot carrying a golden wheat field is flying in the air. The earth is dark because the sun god has fallen. In the pitch-black sky, a huge blue-black fireball flew towards. With its arrival, the temperature rose sharply, and all the vegetation and creatures within a radius of 10,000 miles began to burn. The creatures that were burned to ashes emitted clouds of black gas, flying around the blue-black fireball. It fell heavily on the ground, the flames dissipated, and a tall king appeared. God King Cronus. The billowing black air merged into Cronos' body, and his divine power increased a little. Holding a sickle in his hand, he looked at the black land with serious eyes. There were hundreds of huge mountains on the land in front of him. Hundreds of huge mountains surround a bronze mountain. The whole body of that mountain range is made of ancient copper, and countless dark and deep ores are exposed on the mountain, among which there are many precious green crystals and red crystals, like countless eyes in the darkness. Mysterious divine power permeates here, and the divine power condenses into thick fog, covering the mountains. There are no creatures living near the mountains. Any creatures approaching this mountain range will lose their way in the dense fog and die alone. The lonely king, Cronus, stepped into the thick fog, and when the thick fog met him, it seemed to disperse automatically as if it had a repulsive force. Boom! The mountains in front of him actually began to sink slowly. Cronus looked at the wonder in front of him and continued to move forward. The earth trembled violently, and the soil cracked inch by inch, revealing huge cracks, into which the mountains sank. On the ground, there are only extremely dark pits left. Then, in the deep pit, a new mountain range rose from the ground. The mountains here seem to be alive and are being renewed. Cronos walked towards the bronze mountain in the center, and suddenly, countless spars on the bronze mountain began to shine. The incomparably gorgeous light shone on the earth, and the mountains began to rotate slowly. Boom! The soil broke open, and countless huge hands rose from the ground, and the bronze-colored mountain range began to rotate and rise, and instantly, it became extremely tall. The surrounding mountains are nothing more than a pebble in comparison. The mountain range continued to rise, and the rocks on it gradually fell off, revealing extremely sharp peaks. This mountain range is actually just a horn. It is his mother, Gaia, the first-generation Earth Mother, one of the 9009 divine power horns on her head. As if the size had lost its meaning, as if a star descended in front of him, no matter what, it seemed extremely small at this moment, a huge face appeared above the earth. There are 99 giant mountains on top of her head, and her eyes are as huge as the sun and the moon. She opened her huge mouth, and countless hands rose from the surrounding land. The giant hand grabbed the mountains one after another and stuffed them into Gaia's mouth. She was devouring the mountains. Click! Click! The mountains shattered with a deafening sound. Gaia's left eye was a green crystal the size of a star, and her right eye was a ruby the size of a star. She saw Cronus. Cronus, Gaia didn't open her mouth. Mouths suddenly appeared in the palms of countless arms on the earth, and they started to speak at the same time. The voice was extremely thick, as if the earth itself was speaking. "My son, you left your court. What happened? Curse. Kronos' voice seemed to be burning with endless anger flowing. The curse has begun. My son, start challenging me. Gaia was speechless. She turned her head, and her huge spar eyes looked in the direction of Olympus. Whenever Gaia turns her head, endless gravel will fall from her body, and the gravel will fall like rain, and the surrounding land will form new mountains. So, that's your son, Zeus. Gaia saw what happened in Olympus, and her solemn voice resounded through the earth. I will not interfere with the affairs of this world. Tens of thousands of years ago, I gave you the great rock giant, but that giant, including yourself, was defeated by Zeus. My son, I am afraid that the weak cannot control this world. Mother, Kronos said with an extremely serious face, it seems that you have been sleeping for too long. Could it be that you can't feel that my strength is comparable to that of Zeus? The body of Kronos began to become extremely large, and the scythe in his hand burned with extremely surging flames. All the surrounding mountains were melted by the flames and turned into billowing magma, and the fiery red magma flowed on the ground. Boom! Kronos raised his sickle, the temperature increased tenfold, and all the magma evaporated in an instant. Countless magma evaporated into black particles, with Kronos as the center. Billows of black gas spewed towards the sky. Don't show your poor power in front of me, Kronos. Gaia's huge spar eyes stared at Kronos. You are so weak as that Zeus. I have no interest in distinguishing this. How big is the difference between the two kinds of weakness? Gaia's 100,000 arms pointed to the sky together, and suddenly the power of the earth began to surge. In the air, the melted and evaporated mountain particles that covered the sky and covered the sun began to condense and merge in the air, and turned into huge mountains again, suspended in the air. Those huge mountains fell slowly, gently falling on the ground, like balls of cotton. Kronos watched all this silently. Restoration is always more difficult than destruction, and it requires an extremely powerful force to make the giant mountain fall like cotton. Gaia's strength is unfathomable. Mother, after being the god king for tens of thousands of years, Kronos felt his own weakness for the first time. Enough. Gaia's huge spar eyes began to close. Son, I know what's on your mind. You are stronger than Zeus now, but you still don't feel at ease. You need incomparably powerful power, and you have to completely crush him and crush his strength to be satisfied. Gaia closed her eyes. The light from the huge spar began to dissipate, the earth returned to darkness, the soil cracked, and her huge head began to sink into the ground, silently. Only her voice still echoed. Your request is as naive and ridiculous as if you insisted on becoming a god king back then. Why are you so timid? Weak you. You once faced your mighty father alone, and that pure, fearless courage made this world a whole new look. But now, you want the infallible and absolute power before you dare to fight your weak son Zeus? But you are my son after all, Kronos. This is the last time to help you. Gaia sank into the earth, surrounded by silence. The surrounding mountains also sank into the earth. In front of Kronos, there were only countless dark and deep cracks in the earth. Then, a gust of wind blew through the crack. The strong wind howled, and a tornado blew out from every crack. They rotate violently in the air, like giant dragons. 100,000 tornadoes appear together. They converge towards one place, and the tornado in the center seems to have life. It is devouring other tornadoes, and every time it swallows, its body grows bigger. In the end, countless tornadoes merged into one, as huge as a giant mountain, and the height even surpassed the peak of Olympus. Roar! Suddenly, countless eyes appeared on the huge tornado. They watched the earth silently and saw Kronos. The giant of the wind. Serving for you. This is an elemental giant. Kronos was shocked. This world is composed of 4 basic elements: fire, wind, water, and king. The 4 elements are a part of the world, and 290 has original gods who were born together with these elements. The lord of the fire elemental is the fire lord. The wind element is the 3 kings of listening to the wind, speaking the wind, and seeing the wind. Water is the king of frost and snow. Earth is Gaia. The kings of the other 3 elements, like Gaia, the Earth Mother, almost never appear in the world and seem to have been forgotten. And this elemental giant is the second only to the 4 elemental lords, the creatures who control the power of the elements. Olympus in the distance is shaking. All the gravel explode together. With a radius of 100,000 miles, the mountains disintegrated one after another. It seemed that all the rocks had life, and countless gravels began to roll towards Cronus, like 10 torrents. Rolling stones rushed from all directions in front of Cronus, all the soil on the earth rose up, precious gems deep in the earth flew into the sky, countless shining green crystals and red crystals formed a beating heart, countless soils will its package, the rocks make up the exterior, forming a huge giant. The earth giant who controls the power of the earth. The giants of the earth. Serve you. Immediately, magma began to spew out from countless cracks on the ground. And the sky forms a vast white snow, the cold wind howls, and everything is frosted. The flames on the earth and the ice in the sky are intertwined, forming extremely steaming water vapor, which circulates in the air. In the dense fog, a giant made of pure flames and a giant made of ice appeared in front of Cronus. They looked at Cronus, and their voices resounded through the sky and the earth. At your service, accompanied by the appearance of the 4 elemental giants, Cronos felt Gaia's voice whispering in his ears, which was the mystery of controlling and absorbing the elemental human emperor. I see, Mother. Cronos raised his head suddenly, and a blue-black flame ignited behind him, forming a pair of blue-black wings. The giant of fire let out an earth-shattering roar, instantly transformed into infinite elemental power, and the pure power of fire began to burn the wings of Cronus. This is the flame of burning flames. Instantly F's wings are blood-red, exuding extremely terrifying heat. The earth giant shattered and turned into countless tiny particles, forming an extremely strong armor. On the armor, countless ancient runes circulated. Next to each rune was a huge spar, bursting out with dazzling light. The ice giant turned into flying snow, falling on Cronus's body, rushing to the wings behind him. The elemental power is constantly merging, and the lacquer cold burst out. Looking carefully, Cronus's left wing is composed of blue-black flames with a hint of blood, and within the flames, every inch of ice is as cold as bone, attached to it. This is ice in flames. And the wings on the right are made of incomparably shining and bright ice, and within the ice, a bloody flame is burning. This is fire in the ice. In the end, the giant of the wind pointed at the sky with one hand, and the sky fell instantly. It flew into the air and turned into countless tornadoes. The tornado seems to have wisdom. They whizzed around Cronos violently. At this moment, Cronos is extremely tall. He holds a huge black sickle and wears an extremely majestic armor. The armor shines with the light of all gems in the world. The wings behind him exude extremely powerful elemental power. Thousands of tornadoes are in the air. He dances around. Suddenly, an extremely cruel smile appeared on Cronos' face. Thank you, Mother. My divine court will be eternal, and I will, eternally, rule this divine domain. The power of the elemental giant is still pouring into Cronus's body crazily. His strength has tripled as a whole and is still growing. This kind of power has crushed Zeus. Boom! In Cronos' right hand, a blue-black flame ignited, surrounded by countless elemental forces, and accompanied by the screams of countless creatures. Their souls were also sucked into it, and as fuel for the flame turned into the incomparably huge spear was held by Cronus. He aimed his spear in the direction of Olympus. Boom! The huge force shattered the ground under Cronus' feet, the spear cut through the air, and countless dark spaces burst out from the body of the spear, shattering the void, and the long river of time shrouded it, and flew towards Olympus, facing Zeus between the eyebrows. My son, take the spear. If you are not dead, wait for me to fully integrate the power of the elemental giant, and that is the day you will be completely destroyed. Cronus began to laugh wildly, and with his laughter, all the elemental forces in the world began to resonate with his laughter, and the flames lit up and down with his laughter. Fall. Spears flock to Olympus. Olympus, in the bronze hall. Zeus is discussing the next war with Métis, Themis, and Athena. Métis was dressed in a luxurious red robe, with a golden forehead, gentle and quiet, and felt like a spring breeze just by looking at it. The book of wisdom in her hand was shining brightly, illuminating the dark hall. God King, you need to grant a new sun god to let the sun shine on this land again. Métis said softly that since the fall of Hyperion, the world has been plunged into darkness. Now is the time. Zeus nodded. A group of thunderclouds appeared beside Zeus, and a boy fell out of it. He was still asleep. but his whole body was shining with light, instantly illuminating the hall like daytime. This is the son of the sun god Hyperion, he 3.8 Laius. Zeus once carried him away and placed him in a thundercloud. God King Métis came over, looked at the sleepy Helios, and hesitated to speak. Let me erase the memory in his mind. Métis looked up and looked at Zeus. If he keeps the memory, he will know that you kidnapped him, and his father is dead. It doesn't matter. Zeus shook his head. His father didn't die because of me, it was Cronus who killed him. I took him away, and I actually protected him, and he suffered casualties in this war. Even if he misunderstood me, it doesn't matter. Can't I still grasp the sun god in my court? If that's the case, I'm not qualified to be a god king. Métis nodded, and a pool of spring water appeared behind her, crystal nectar condensed in her hands, on Helios' forehead. Helios opened his eyes and gradually woke up. He saw Zeus. Helios, Zeus looked at him majestically. Your father, Hyperion, has died. The original king of gods, Cronus, has fled. Now, I will control the court of God. I canonize you as the new generation of sun god. Are you willing to be loyal to me forever and accept this priesthood? At this moment, an incomparably dazzling light appeared. Amidst the strong light, a young girl stepped into the hall. She had short blonde hair, was dressed in a military uniform with white feathers, was barefoot, held a spear, and held a rein in her hand. Her beautiful pupils burst into 1,000 sun-like brilliance. Ah! Athena yanked the reins fiercely, and pulled 4 batches of flaming horses and sun chariots into the hall. This kind of power. Helios was terrified in his heart, and looked at Athena in fear. The sun car is an artifact exclusive to the 25 sun gods. It is the body of the sun, with the weight of a planet. And she can actually pull it. 4 flaming horses pulled the sun chariot into the hall, bursting out with extremely hot flames and light. The sun chariot that was supposed to be above the sky, bringing warmth and light to the creatures on the earth, is now shining in the hall of Zeus. The light shone brightly in the hall, and in an instant, it seemed that the entire palace was going to be roasted. The sun, as expected, possesses terrifying power. No wonder Hyperion was once one of the strongest main gods among the 12 main gods. Zeus sighed in his heart, the thunder in his eyes was shining, and the powerful god king's intention bloomed in his eyes. Perfect, eternal and immortal, the light and heat emitted by the sun could not hurt Zeus at all. Themis mobilized her divine power, and a silver scale appeared behind her. Her beautiful eyes turned into silver, and she looked at the sun carriage calmly. And the spring water behind Métis vibrated violently, and the water flowed into the sky, forming 3 water shields, covering the whole body. Under the scorching sun, the water cover turned into white gas and seemed to be evaporating. Métis showed pain on his face. She covered her eyes with her white arms, and the intense light was about to make her eyes burn. Thunder appeared in Zeus's hand, and rushed towards Métis, blocking the strong light for her. As for Athena, she was pulling the sun carriage, her eyes were as bright as the sun, she was not afraid at all, and looked at Helios coldly. Her incomparably handsome, masculine image of a goddess has carved a deep imprint in Helios' heart. Helios opened his eyes wide in surprise, he couldn't believe what happened before his eyes. Zeus is not afraid of the strong light of the sun carriage. Athena was able to pull this batch of carriages, and she was not afraid of its light and heat. The carriage is an artifact exclusive to the sun god. Father Hyperion had taught Helios for a long time before he gradually got used to its strong light. She is Athena, my favorite daughter. Zeus stared at Helios. Her priesthood will be art, battle and victory. Then, will you accept my orders? Helios struggled to control the desire to gaze at Athena, kneeling before Zeus. May the King of God be eternal. Your decree is my destiny. I will drive the sun for you, bring light and heat to this land, and spread your prestige all over the world. The eyes of Zeus can see through falsehood. He stared at Helios and nodded. This is a heartfelt statement. He did not deceive Zeus. Thunder surged from Zeus's body and condensed into a sword. Zeus held the sword and pressed the sword on Helios' shoulder. Divine power surged from Helios' body, and behind him condensed into a burning crimson scorching sun. Helios' complexion changed, and he felt infinite divine power surge, and he was extremely pleasantly surprised. The scorching red sun behind him is the source of his divine power. DJ. The ancient and obscure divine voice rang in Zeus' ears, and the bell of awakening vibrated in Zeus's thundercloud. This is a sign that can help the gods awaken. Zeus once used it to help Métis and Themis awaken their divine power and raise their ranks. Zeus thought for a while, and he suppressed the awakening bell. He will continue to investigate Helios. If Helios is loyal, he will help Helios awaken in the future. If he is unfaithful, get rid of him and let his future son, Apollo, be the sun god. His wife Leto has given birth to 2 god sons, one of whom is the future god of light, Apollo. Helios, go and fulfill your mission. Remember to be loyal to me. I will give everything that is loyal to me, and I will take away everything that is not loyal to me. Zeus stared indifferently ahead, his mind was no longer on Helios. God King, Métis stared out of the hall. Here they come. I know. A burst of divine power erupted in the distance. It was the power of the dead and the power of the sea. They turned into 2 beams of light, soaring into the sky. The sound of the endless tide resounded above the mountains of Olympus, and countless black souls were flying in the air. Outside the main hall, the 2 gods have recovered. His own brother, Hades Winter, finally woke up. My great brother, we finally meet. The majestic voice sounded, divine power poured into the hall, and the tide appeared out of thin air, as if it was going to drown Olympus in an instant. Helios opened his eyes wide in fear. He jumped onto the sun chariot, and the 4 groups of flaming horses roared and rushed straight to the sky. In an instant, the world was no longer dark, and light shrouded the sky and the earth. He was driving the sun chariot, looking at the hall below in horror. The sea water appeared out of nowhere on the peak of Olympus, and then flowed violently down the mountain. The entire Olympus is like a giant waterfall. Boom! A huge octopus gushed out from the seawater, stirring up countless seawater, and then, a god with an octopus in the lower body and a silver armor on the upper half appeared. The future Big Three of Olympus, Potu. His silver-white hair, countless ancient and mysterious runes circulated around his body. Dazzling blue light burst out from his eyes, and the terrifying divine power shook Olympus. My brother. Poseidon's face was firm and cold, but there was a smile on the corner of his mouth that seemed to be avenged. He opened his arms and looked at the sky. The endless sea rose from behind him and went straight to the sky. Boom! Countless water jets soared into the sky, forming a water curtain from the peak of Olympus, and the sea tide roared, just like a real sea descending. Ha 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 ha. Poseidon smiled arrogantly. I finally got to taste the taste of freedom. It turned out to be so wonderful. Poseidon. A flat voice sounded, and the black crows and countless undead flew across the sky, and another god descended. His complexion is pale, his body is thin, and he has long black hair. He rode a skeleton horse, and then endless bones fell from the sky. The future Big Three of Olympus, Pluto, Hades. The bones built a road of bones from the sky, leading directly to the hall. Hades is riding a skeleton horse, surrounded by endless undead and black crows behind him. We want to see our brother. Hades looked calmly at the hall. In my dream, I dreamed that we had a brother. 11. The door of the hall opened slowly. Métis, Themis, and Athena stepped out of the hall, and then Zeus appeared. Hades stared at Zeus. He felt that his divine power was extremely round and perfect, and the thunder in his eyes had the meaning of supremacy. Father Cronus was ruler of heaven and earth. Hades spoke, his voice mellow and melodious. This Olympus is his court of God. Where's Father? He asked. Cronus swallowed you. I set you free. I defeated Cronus. He has left. But he may come back at any time, Zeus replied. Don't expect our gratitude. Poseidon looked indifferent. The gods will not be grateful. Zeus, it seems that you have ruled this court. Hades' eyes suddenly turned red, making his pale skin even more terrifying. We will not obey. I, like you, have the most noble blood. Poseidon waved his hand, and instantly all the tides dissipated, and he turned into a human form, stepping on the ground. I'm going to challenge you. Yes. Hades nodded. His skeleton horse suddenly shattered and turned into countless bats, dead spirits and bones, and merged into his body. Let us decide who is the ruler of this divine court. Coming. Zeus shuddered in his heart. He had known for a long time that these 2 brothers were not easy to get along with. Zeus is confident that with his own strength, he can completely defeat these 2 brothers. Even kill them. However, now is definitely not the time for brothers to fight each other. Zeus didn't want to kill his brother either. Cronus is not dead yet, he is accumulating strength and may come back at any time. Zeus looked majestic. It is not yet known who will rule this world. We must not fight to the death now to decide who is superior. We need to unite, and wait until we defeat Cronus and the overall situation is settled before deciding on the ownership of heaven, earth and the court of God. Yeah. The red in Hades' eyes dissipated a little, he stared into the distance, and countless crows burst out around him, flying to the sky. A flock of crows chirped in the air. Indeed, Hades turned his head and looked at Poseidon. I can feel my father's breath. And his monstrous anger. He wants to kill us all. Poseidon's face remained stern. I agree with you. After the war is over and Cronus is defeated, the ownership of the world will be decided. But, the chill on Poseidon's face was even worse. Divine power erupted from his body, and 100,000 octopus tentacles emerged from his arms, floating in the air. Who is in command of this war? Is it you, is it me, or is it Hades? Poseidon looked majestic and terrifying. We don't fight to the death, but we still have to compete. Zeus, I want to compete with you in strength. Zeus's eyes showed a bright light. It seemed that this brother would not obey him without a contest. Okay. Let's compare. Okay. Let's each lift the heaviest object for comparison. Whoever lifts the heavier object will win. Poseidon roared furiously, showing determination on his face. He raised his hand, and the sound of rumbling sea tide erupted from the palm of his hand. His majestic voice resounded above the hall. The 7 oceans that surround the continent, all the waters, hear my call, for the master of the oceans is here. The divine power frantically gathered from Poseidon's hands, and suddenly, the heavens and the earth erupted with an unprecedented loud noise, and the seawater rose out of thin air. The 7 oceans surrounding the entire continent began to boil, and the seawater turned into crystal-clear drops, flying towards Olympus. The height of the ocean is dropping rapidly. Boom! Countless drops of water danced violently in the air. They flew towards Olympus, gathered on top of Poseidon's head, and condensed into an extremely huge water polo. It's half the weight of all the oceans. Poseidon was holding the huge water polo on his finger, and he, who was extremely burly, was as tiny as a grain of dust compared to the water drops. Among the water drops, there are countless huge whales, monsters in the deep sea, and shining corals, exuding a surging momentum. Themis felt extremely heavy in her heart. She stared heavily at the huge water polo, with such huge power. Zeus. Zeus, raise your eyes, look. This is half of the seawater in the entire ocean. Poseidon's divine power surged violently, the wind howled, and the divine power condensed into countless divine winds, roaring around him, and the huge water ball burst into an astonishing roar. Call. Now, compete with me, Zeus, with the weight of the ocean. It is indeed a powerful force. Zeus looked at Poseidon, thinking in his heart. What kind of thing should he lift to convince Poseidon? All the thunderclouds and thunderbolts in the world? Lift up the earth itself? Hold up the sun, the moon, and 100,000 stars? Or the 4 pillars of Optimus standing in all directions? When Zeus was thinking, the voice of Tis sounded in his heart. The king of gods. Whether it is lifting the pillar of the sky or the planet, can't really make Poseidon obey. Only this. He can't do it, good king. Métis' hair fluttered in the strong wind, and she was protected by a water shield all over her body, resisting the pressure of the huge water polo, showing pain on her face, and silently transmitted a voice to Zeus. Well said, Métis. Zeus nodded. He turned his head and stared at Poseidon majestically. Lifting up half of the world's oceans is indeed an incomparably powerful force, but you can't compare it with this one. The aura of a god-king erupted from Zeus' body. This aura was extremely majestic and sacred. This was Zeus' innate aura. Poseidon felt Zeus' god-king aura and couldn't help frowning. This kind of sacred and supreme breath, I really don't have it. But what is he going to do? Zeus raised his hand. Sunday yesterday. Every creature in the world, your god-king is here. Boom-ling. A thunderbolt erupted from Zeus' fingertips and shot straight into the sky. This 100-kilometer thick pillar of thunder rushed from the peak of Olympus to the limit of the sky, and all the creatures around the direction saw this terrifying image and heard the majestic voice of Zeus, and their hairs stood on end. Rise. In the center of this divine domain, on the towering Mount Olympus, Zeus turned into a golden phantom, with countless thunderbolts shining behind him, gazing majestically in all directions. All the living beings within 1,000,000 miles watched Zeus's terrifying influence, and felt infinite admiration and horror in their hearts. Spirits. Zeus' majestic voice resounded everywhere. I am your god. I know that this god realm has been in chaos and disorder for a long time, and your hearts are full of pain. Give me your pain. Let me bear your pain, because I have descended to Olympus, and I will rule this land of gods. I am your god, your protector, Zeus. Zeus's vast divine voice resounded through the earth, and countless creatures looked at the huge golden phantom in the distance in horror, with infinite doubts in their hearts. Bear. Our pain? Our gods are so benevolent? How does he bear our pain? The creatures talked a lot. You looked at me, I looked at you, not knowing what to do. They have lived too long under the brutal rule of Cronus, and their hearts are filled with fear. Finally, a few brave men took action. 760. A white-feathered elf raised his hand in the direction of Olympus. She looked in the direction of Olympus devoutly. The great god, my child, was devoured by a giant dragon not long ago. I miss my child day and night, and the pain cannot be extricated. Please take away my pain. Suddenly, a black airflow flew from above her head in the direction of Olympus. The white feather elf mother blinked, and suddenly, the melancholy in her eyes faded and became bright again. It's true, my pain, gone, she cried out excitedly. This is real. This is real. Seeing her reaction, other creatures raised their hands one after another, sending their pain in the direction of Olympus. A few brave men led other creatures, and all the creatures raised their hands one after another, and countless black air currents rushed towards Olympus. With Mount Olympus as the center, surrounded by millions of kilometers, more than billions of creatures survived. So much pain, Hades silently stared at Zeus in front of him, pointing to the sky. Countless streams of black air condensed into his hands. They were countless painful entities, CFBE, exuding incomparably terrifying power. This is the pain of billions of living beings, and I will bear it. Zeus looked at Poseidon. Poseidon, do you think that the pain of billions of living beings is equivalent to half the weight of the ocean? Which is lighter and which is heavier? Poseidon stared at Zeus and suddenly laughed. Okay, Zeus, you are really powerful. I really can't bear the pain of billions of creatures. This competition, you won. The war with Cronus, I listened to you. Poseidon turned around and jumped into the ocean from the peak of Olympus, and the seawater in his hand dispersed into countless dark clouds, drifted around, and turned into rain. Zeus, this is a very exciting match. With the pain of billions of living beings, against half the weight of the ocean, Hades got off the skeleton horse, surrounded by countless souls and crows, and his complexion was even paler and terrifying at this moment. You competed with Poseidon in strength, and you won. Then, I will compete with you in speed. Do you dare to compare? Then come on. Zeus looked at Hades calmly. Very good. Hades looked at Zeus. He snapped his fingers, a crisp sound sounded, and a beautiful butterfly appeared on his fingertips. The colorful wings of the butterfly fluttered and rested on his extremely pale fingertips. Which is the fastest in this god's domain? Beautiful goddess, tell me. Hades smiled and looked at Tis behind Zeus. Goddess Metis, you are the best advisor and assistant of Zeus. Tell me, what is the fastest speed in this god's domain? Killing intent suddenly exploded from Hades' body. Hades, I don't allow you to offend her. Zeus stared at Hades majestically, and his killing intent suddenly burst out. Haha, can't even Goddess of Wisdom answer this question? Hades smiled, staring at the butterfly in his hand. The fastest speed in this god's domain is from life to death. For example, this butterfly is alive now, and I only need to touch it lightly. Hades' fingertips pierced the butterfly's vulnerable abdomen. It's dead now. The butterfly fell from Hades' hand. The moment from birth to death is the fastest. So, how to go faster than that? Kill a butterfly and keep it alive. Pierce the belly of this butterfly and bring it from death to new life before death comes. A new butterfly appeared in Hades' hands. Goddess of Wisdom, let me tell you that death also has a speed. From the moment of birth to death, during that time, surpass the speed of death. Hades' voice was very soft, and he stared at the butterfly on his fingertips with great solemnity. Countless souls stayed on his shoulders, and the souls stretched out countless eyes, all staring at the butterfly. White bones emerged from around Hades. Numerous white bones formed a skeleton that surrounded Hades tightly. Their empty eye sockets also stared at the butterfly. Zeus felt that the incomparably majestic and terrifying divine power of Hades was all concentrated in his eyes and fingertips at this moment. Hades pierced the belly of the butterfly with his fingertip, and then, his fingertip flickered. Pooh! The butterfly's blood and intestines flowed out from its abdomen, but its wings were still flapping. It flapped its wings and flew in the air for a moment, then fell to the ground, dead. There is no doubt that the butterfly was dead when Hades pierced its abdomen. But Hades used his speed to take the butterfly away from death for a moment. It was a moment before death overtook the butterfly. This is indeed a miracle. Tis murmured. This is the second fastest speed in this god's domain. Métis' voice reached Zeus' ears softly. Hades has a speed faster than death. If you want to defeat him, it may be the only one. Beyond time. Métis' Book of Wisdom flapped. Great God King, your speed can definitely surpass Hades. However, it is difficult to surpass time even for a moment. Got it. Zeus nodded silently. Zeus's divine power and position surpassed Hades, and he was confident that his speed was faster than Hades. However, Hades has shown a speed faster than death, and he must surpass this speed. Faster than this speed, only beyond time. If you want to transcend time, Zeus thought to himself. Beyond time. Hades said with a smile, this is the only way to surpass me. The river of time and the river of destiny are the foundation of everything in the world. And everything else is just the foam born in the flow of these two rivers. You and I are nothing but bubbles, and bubbles, do you want to reverse into the river itself, or even surpass the river? You lost, Zeus. Hades looked a little crazy. Beyond time, Zeus looked at Hades solemnly, his majestic voice sounded, it's easy. During Zeus's battles, the illusion of the long river of time and the long river of fate appeared many times, and the miracle of turning back time also appeared. As long as there is enough power, Zeus mobilized all the power of chaos in his body. Hardy see through the essence. Zeus has gazed at the long river of fate and the long river of time countless times with thunderous eyes that can see through emptiness. Seeing through the essence, they are composed of countless energy light spots. All the power of chaos, in the source of Zeus's divine power, the countless black particles condensed in the air and ocean, condensed in the golden olive tree, and golden narcissus began to condense. It was the countless power of chaos, and it was the most powerful power in Zeus' body. It's nothing more than reversing time. Boom. As if the sky was singing hymns, countless black particles surged from Zeus with majestic power. It was pure power without any modification or packaging. It was the most original power from the beginning of the world's creation, the power of chaos force. The power of chaos turned into a giant beast. It has the heads of 1,000 various ferocious beasts, and 2 huge claws, grabbing towards the void. A gigantic beast with the heads of 1,000 beasts. This is. Métis screamed in her heart. She had seen this giant beast in an obscure prophecy, and he would be the enemy of Zeus. And his phantom actually appeared here. Before he had time to think, Métis only saw that the giant beast made of the power of chaos stretched out its huge claws that were constantly smashing, breaking and reuniting, and grabbed the air fiercely. The void is shattered, and endless mist surges out of it, and ancient mysterious sounds and runes dance around the void. It's like catching a giant snake or a river, and being pulled out of the void by the giant claws alive. Boom! Zeus turned into a thunderbolt and rushed into the hero of the river. The river of time. Themis' short silver hair was flying in the air, her silver pupils were shining, and her delicate face was trembling a little. According to the legend, this god's domain is formed by 2 intertwined rivers, one is the river of fate and the other is the river of time. Is this the real river of time? Or, this is a part of the phantom of the river of time, but even this is enough to make people tremble. Métis' voice was extremely trembling. Boom! Suddenly, the river exploded and turned into countless drops of water, and the drops of water turned into mist, covering the whole world. The silver sword of Themis appeared in her hand instantly, slashing at the mist, and the mist instantly engulfed her sword. Themis was taken aback. As the goddess of law, the silver sword in her hand could cut through falsehoods, not to mention the fog. This is not fog, this is the time of the entity. Athena felt the mist, father's power, indeed, powerful. Boom. The fog dissipated in an instant, and everyone found that Zeus was standing in front of him, Hades was in front of him, and there was still a butterfly on his fingertip. Pooh! Hades poked the butterfly's belly with his fingertip. Hades looked terrified. He went back to the past? The butterfly's blood and intestines flowed out, but it still flapped its wings in the air, and then fell to the ground and died. You brought us back to the past, back to the time when I challenged you just now? Hades looked at the dead butterfly on the ground in amazement. You know what you saw. Zeus stared at Hades. My brother, you shall keep your word. In this war, obey me. Huh. Hades trembled slightly, and then his face returned to calm. I will keep my word, my brother. You can call me when you need it. Hades glanced at Zeus thoughtfully, and then he summoned the skeleton horse. Countless bones paved a road, and Hades rode away. Phew. It's over. As soon as Hades left, Métis immediately knelt down on the ground, and the fierce struggle between the three Zeus brothers made her breathless. Métis, are you all right? Zeus walked over. Mother, Athena helped Métis up. I'm fine. Mother, I'll take you back, you need to rest. Athena smiled at Zeus, waved her hand, and helped Métis to leave. Drip, the task has been completed. You have awakened and subdued your brothers and sisters. Obtain 10 million original powers. A crisp system prompt sounded. It's over. Themis' elegant voice sounded, and there were only 2 of them left in the palace of Olympus. Beautiful Themis, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Zeus's heart jumped when he saw Themis, her beautiful silver hair, elegant and glamorous face and extremely noble figure. God King, I am very happy. Themis walked over with a smile. She was still as cold as a mountain, but Zeus felt that she seemed not as proud as before. But I feel that there is an incomparably huge power appearing in your divine body. What is that? It seems that Themis has felt the 10 million original power rewarded by the system. That's a secret. Zeus smiled and took Themis' hand. Of course he would not tell Themis this secret. I won't pry into your secrets, but I feel that you are full of power. I'm afraid I can't bear this power. Themis' hands were as cold as icebergs. Drip. The system prompts. You can practice with Themis to speed up the absorption and transformation of the original power. Oh, can it still be like this? Zeus pointed his finger on Themis' forehead. Her forehead was also extremely smooth, as white and cold as snow. You can bear it. Zeus felt Themis' breathing and heartbeat, and he transferred the original power from the source of divine power and blasted it into Themis' body. Every time he blasted into a part, Zeus felt his heartbeat trembling with Themis' ben. After a long time, in the Olympus Palace, Themis has fallen asleep. After practicing with Themis, half of the original power of 10 million was consumed, and Zeus' strength went further. Zeus looked into the distance, which was the direction in which Cronus fled. Where did Cronos go? After Cronus left, Zeus kept searching for his trace with his consciousness. But he could only grasp vague information, and he felt that Cronus' power was also growing. That growth rate seems to have surpassed itself. Whenever he thought of this, a nameless fire rose in Zeus's heart. His fists could not help but rattle, and violent killing intent rose from his whole body. God King, why did you burst out with such a terrifying killing intent? A god entered the hall, and behind him were 3 burning torches. It's Prometheus. Great God King, I have brought you 2 important news. Prometheus smiled and said thankfully. Great King of Gods, do you still remember our agreement? Prometheus walked into the hall with a smile, his eyes fixed on Zeus, feeling Zeus' divine power carefully, and kept talking with Crow. North's divine power was compared. Thunder flashed in Zeus' eyes, and he saw through Prometheus's intentions, can't help frowning. Prometheus is not on his side, and of course he is not on Cronus' side either. Prometheus, of course I remember our agreement. Zeus replied, you promised to help me win the god court. After I succeed, I will share the power with you. However, although I defeated Cronus, I did not completely eliminate him. My court is not stable yet. Moreover, you did not contribute to this. Zeus replied indifferently. I understand. So, I brought you 2 messages to help you ascend to the throne of God King. Prom. 773, Hughes smiled. The first news is the whereabouts of God King Cronus. He went to his mother, Earth Mother Gaia, and he got the blessing of Gaia, the mother of the earth, and the power of Gaia, the 4 elemental giants. Not only has he absorbed the power of the elemental giants and evolved his own wings, but he can form a huge battle formation with the elemental giants to challenge you. How does his strength compare to that of Oz? 3 times stronger than you. Zeus didn't answer, he stared at Prometheus, savoring his words. Métis did speculate that Kronos had gone to find Gaia, the Earth Mother, and he himself felt the growth of Kronos' power. But it was 3 times stronger than. After a while, Zeus spoke. Prometheus, in that case, why don't you turn to Cronus? This domain of the gods needs to change, and it can no longer be ruled by Cronus. Therefore, I will help you, so that you can greatly improve your combat power. Of course, this is a lie. Prometheus did not want the difference in combat power between Zeus and Cronus to be too large. He hoped that both sides would fight to the detriment of both sides, and in the end he would come out to clean up the mess and even ascend to the position of God King. Zeus chuckled in his heart, his thunderous eyes saw through Prometheus' smug plan, but he didn't expose it. It is still in the stage of mutual utilization, so what are you going to do? There is only one way to greatly improve combat effectiveness in a short period of time. Prometheus suddenly opened his eyes wide, with a serious expression on his face. Abyss of Tartarus, Cyclops and 100-armed giants. Only they can give you the power to fight Cronus. The 100-armed giant and the Cyclops, before the titans such as Cronus, were first conceived and born by the Earth Mother Gaia. They are powerful and skilled in crafts, but stupid in mind. Cronus imprisoned them, asked them to build warships, and promised them that when their warships satisfied him, they could be free. Of course, Kronos can never be satisfied. Of course I know their power. But how can I convince them to help me? Prometheus smiled. This is my second gift to you. A beam of light appeared in front of Zeus, which revealed the phantom of Cronus. This is Cronus, a council of gods shortly after he ascended to the throne of the God King. In the phantom, Cronus sits on the bronze throne, facing Prometheus. Prometheus, tell me. What shall I do with the 100-armed giant and the one-eyed man, my stupid brothers? Great God King, can't you defeat them? It is possible to defeat them, but to completely eliminate them, my strength is still not enough. I want my court to be stable for thousands of years, and I will never allow giants to interfere with the operation of the court with their own power. In the phantom, Prometheus' eyes rolled. Great God King, I heard that a 100-armed giant is infinitely powerful, while a one-eyed man can see through the origin of matter. They are the greatest craftsmen in God's domain. Indeed. Since this is the case, then you should ask them to make a magic weapon for you. Our sun god needs a chariot, and the ocean god needs a new Poseidon palace. Let them serve you. With the help of the god of God, your court will be more consolidated. There was a hint of killing intent in Kronos' eyes, but, when they fulfilled my request, I had to set them free. This is the mystery. The eyes of Prometheus in the phantom glowed like a jackal. Finally, you want them to build a perfect Olympus battleship. And promise them, set them free as long as the battleship pleases you. However, you'll never be satisfied with that battleship. Because a perfect warship does not exist, flaws can always be found. In this way, the 100-armed giant and the Cyclops will sink into the abyss forever, and they will continue to improve that battleship forever. Prometheus, you have such a vicious heart and such a masterly plan, my court needs you. Phantom ends. How about it, great Zeus? Prometheus threw the phantom light ball into Zeus's hand. This is enough to wake up the giants and help you. Zeus smiled. This is very favorable evidence, enough to awaken the giant. Very well. But Prometheus, don't you fear that the giants will tear you to pieces? This is your plan. I'm not worried about this, the great God King. Prometheus saluted, and Russia withdrew. Please remember the promise between us. The fire behind Prometheus flickered, then disappeared. Looking at the empty hall, Zeus fell into deep thought. Prometheus was never loyal to Zeus. In history, Zeus asked people to sacrifice offerings to the gods, but Prometheus obstructed it and prevented people from believing in Zeus. Later he stole the Olympic flame, which is how he got the nickname, Fire Thief. Prometheus is a great threat to Zeus 4.0, and he must die. But it is difficult to make a contract with Prometheus. Because the contract between the gods is different from that of ordinary creatures. It's fine for ordinary creatures to violate the contract, but if the gods violate the contract, they will be backlashed by the power of the source. In other words, if Prometheus helped himself, Zeus must abide by the contract and share power with him. So, wanted to come up with a plan. Let the giants help him without violating the contract with Prometheus. Zeus was lost in thought, but his consciousness full of the power of thunder is still searching for traces on the land of Olympus. Zeus wanted to find a creature, a very important creature, for the most powerful artifact in Olympus. Shield of Medusa. The shield of Medusa is one of the most powerful and famous weapons in Olympus. It not only has great protection power, but also can release petrified light to petrify enemies. In fact, the shield of Medusa is Aegis, the shield of Zeus. It's just that Medusa's head is inlaid on it. Zeus' consciousness has been searching for Medusa, but he still can't find her. Zeus walked out of the main hall and strolled in the huge garden of Olympus, the soft moonlight sprinkled on the white daisies. The shrine of Olympus is extremely huge, and at this moment, it seems very empty here. Here is used as a training ground for fighting. Here is the palace of Métis. Here is the palace of Themis, there is for Leto. Keep Hera's palace far away from theirs, or trouble will inevitably arise. This can be used as a meeting place for the gods. Zeus wandered in the palace of Olympus, planning the future layout in his mind. Father. A morning light rose in the distance, and with the morning light, a goddess came. She has golden eyes, golden hair and a golden battle armor, and a white owl on her shoulder hoots loudly. 25 Athena's honorific name is also the star that has just opened in the color of the sky, and the color of the sky is the color of the dawn. It was Athena. Father, I settled down for my mother, and she fell asleep. Athena's pupils are bright and heroic. My dear daughter, what is the matter? The conspiracy of Prometheus, the terrifying growth of Cronus' divine power, and the Earth Mother Gaia behind him. Zeus's heart is full of thoughts, but seeing the bright and beautiful daughter, Zeus still felt relieved. I saw a woman. I felt a deep bond with her destiny, but I didn't know why. Woman? Zeus mobilized his consciousness and searched for 1,000 miles, but there was no woman worthy of attention. Her name is Medusa, and she is a mermaid who has lost her tail. She has no supernatural powers and is an ordinary creature, but I feel so different. Medusa. Zeus's heart skipped a beat, his consciousness continued to search, and finally found her in a village near Olympus. Just an ordinary creature, nothing special, no wonder Zeus has been unable to find her. In history, Medusa was a snake-haired banshee, whose eyes could emit petrified light, and her fighting power was extremely terrifying, but here, she was just an ordinary creature? Suddenly, Zeus understood that it was because the curse had not yet come. Medusa is not a born demon, but a demon who has been cursed by the gods. Moreover, it is not an ordinary curse, but Medusa needs to be cursed under extreme despair, anger, and extremely intense emotions before she can transform into a terrifying snake-haired monster. In history, Medusa is extremely beautiful, and she is even more admirable for her beautiful hair, which is called the smoothest and most beautiful hair in the whole Olympus. As a priest of the temple of Athena, she attracted countless people to watch her beauty. Her hair made Athena jealous. One day, Medusa met Poseidon while walking on the beach. Poseidon coveted her beauty and tried to get her. Desperate, Medusa ran to the temple of Athena, begging for help from the goddess she worshipped, Athena. But Athena did not respond to her, and Poseidon sullied Medusa's purity in Athena's temple. After the matter was over, Athena finally appeared. She is full of anger, but her anger is not directed at Poseidon, but at Medusa. She condemns Medusa to be proud of her beauty, seduce the gods, commit a great crime, and as punishment, her body will become snake god. Even a head of hair will become snake hair. After being deprived of her purity in the temple, Medusa was punished so severely. She howled in despair, with blood spurting out of her eyes, and transformed into a terrifying gorgon. Later, the son of Zeus, the great hero Perseus beheaded Medusa, and Athena inlaid his head on the shield. But that was much later, after the birth of man. Zeus can't afford to wait. Cronus' divine power is constantly growing every second and every moment. Zeus needs to improve his combat power as quickly as possible. Father, I see your thoughts. Athena's eyes shone brightly. I understand. You need Medusa's head. Then, I will turn her into a monster with my own hands, and dedicate her head to you. Athena, Father, you don't have to say any more. Everything is for Olympus. I know that in order for her to turn into a demon, she must be wronged, her emotions must be aroused, and then she must be cursed. I don't bother to do this kind of thing, except for one situation, that is for the eternity of your kingship. Athena's eyes were extremely firm. She didn't wait for Zeus to answer, turned around, turned into a golden light, and rushed to the earth. Looking in the direction Athena was going, Zeus nodded. To obtain the power of petrified light, Medusa must be transformed into a snake demon. Different from ordinary curses, it must be done when Medusa is extremely sad and angry. This is sorry for Medusa. But Zeus had already made up his mind. For the kingship of Olympus, Zeus will never show mercy. Then, it's time to practice. Zeus's eyes flashed with thunder, and he entered his own thunder. After subduing his brother, the system rewarded him with 10 million original power, which can be used to enhance his combat power. Among the thunderclouds, Zeus stared at his own strength. Divine rank, divine consciousness, and divine breath. He has ascended to the position of the Lord God, and the Trinity has been completed. Divine body. The fourth level of chaos body forging. Godhead. God King, ruler, judge. Weapon. Golden thunder fused with the spear of liberty. Aegis, the shield of Zeus. The source of divine power. Golden olive trees and golden daffodils stand in the sea of rose gold and stars. Countless white particles representing the power of faith and black particles representing the power of chaos floated on the ocean. Tens of thousands of golden thunders shine above the sea. Faction. Olympus. Sea God Island. Wives. Métis, Themis, Euronome, Aphrodite, Demeter, Leto, Hera. Legion. Mermaid Legion. White Dragon Legion. Believers. Thousands of miles centered on Olympus, and most of the creatures in the Western Sea, a total of 1 billion. The position of the god has been completed, and it will be very difficult to increase the rank of the main god, so why not continue to improve the power of body forging? Zeus directly grabbed 2 million original power, injected it into his divine body, and continued to improve his physical strength. Chaos body forging secrets are very powerful, but the resources required are also extremely terrifying. If the original power of 2 million goes down, it will be swallowed up and absorbed in an instant, but it only increases half a level. Zeus simply grabbed all the remaining original power and poured it all into the sink of the gods. The chaos body forging mystery greedily devours power like a beast. Zeus closed his eyes and controlled every particle in his body. Every particle was enveloped by the power of the source and grew stronger. I don't know how long it took. Zeus suddenly opened his eyes and stared at himself. The secret of chaos body forging has reached the peak of the 4th level, and there is only a little distance to break through to the 5th level. But the original power has been exhausted. If you want to absorb the power between heaven and earth for exercise, I don't know how many years it will take to break through. Then, it's time to go to the abyss again, and let the 100-armed giant and the Cyclops fight because of me. Thunder flashed in Zeus' eyes.